welcome back to the 200th episode of Call Me By Your Game. I'm your host, McCabe, and this is a podcast where I have guests on to hear from them about a special video game from a particular moment in their life. This is a show that if you haven't listened to it, it's not just about the games, but it's about the people who play them and the impact that games have had on their lives. This is a very special episode that we have for you. This is the 200th episode of the podcast, as I've said 2 times already, and will say countless more. And I have something fun planned for us today. This is going to be unusual. We're not going to be having, a single guest on for the one-on-one interviews that I normally do. Today, I'm actually going to be delivering a 3-part episode as a little celebration of the 4.5 years that I've been doing this show, to not just celebrate, myself a little bit, the podcast, and the people who contribute to it, including our guests and listeners, but also just to celebrate, the time that I've had doing this, because this is not a podcast that I'm going to be doing forever, I don't think, but it's one that I've really loved doing up until this point and plan to do for at least some time longer. I'm being so vague as if I have some end date planned. I don't have anything like that planned, but I have a lot of really fun stuff to come in this episode. If you're listening to this podcast for the first time, or this is your 200th episode, you've been with us from the beginning, then I've got, I'm going to have all sorts of stuff in the show notes if you want to find out more about myself, where to find me, support me, and also the people who contribute to this podcast, wherever you're listening to this, whether it's on YouTube or in a podcast player of your choice. If you go in the show notes, you're going to find links to everything that I plug and probably more stuff, because we have a million ways to support and find the show in other places. We don't just live here in the podcast version of the show. We also have a Discord for our podcast network, which basically, if you're not familiar, acts as a forum where you can discuss video games and all sorts of other things, including this podcast, with other wonderful, sweet folks over there. You can find us on social media. We've got a TikTok account now that I've been working on for a few months at this point, and our highlights are super fun, and I feel like they really showcase a lot of the good energy of the show. So you can find that sort of stuff. You can find our Patreon, which I'm going to be talking about a bunch, which is where all of the bonus podcasts that myself and the other people who contribute to Super NPC Radio, that's where all that stuff is. It's basically a way to support us financially, and also get a bunch of bonus stuff in return. There's all sorts of stuff like that. But I think the way I wanted to start today was just by giving you a little intro of what you're going to see. So today, for this first part of the episode, it's actually just going to be me. Now, I've done this once before, I think all the way back, maybe it was it's technically not numbered episode 5, but about 5 episodes into this show, the holidays rolled around back in 2019, and I ended up recording a solo holiday special where I recounted my 5 favorite holiday gaming memories, and I think also promoted some podcasts that I had nothing to do with, but just that I was like, hey, these are some podcasts and YouTube channels I really like. Anyway, it's a long-winded way to say that this first part is going to be solo. It's going to be me talking to you, the listener, and myself a bit about some stuff I have coming up, giving you a better background of who I am, a little peek behind the curtain of just like what I do, both with the show and outside of it. I'm going to have more podcast recommendations for everybody. And then part 2, I'm actually going to be having a guest favorite of the show, one of my best friends, Matt Apodaca, on to list our top 10 games that have come out since this podcast aired. So basically 2019 and on. And then in part 3, I'm going to be having producer, editor, and composer of our original theme song that you hear at the beginning of the show, Jeremy Schmidt, on to just sort of just kick back and chat about the show, its beginnings, the changes that have happened over the years, and what to expect for the show's immediate future. So yeah, those are those 3 parts, and this is the first one. I guess first and foremost, thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're out there whether this is your first episode or, like I said earlier, you've been listening since the beginning, thank you so much for your support. As soon as I think teased this podcast back in 2019, I felt just an overwhelming amount of support and love from people who were basically just like putting themselves behind me, not knowing really what this podcast was going to become or what it would even be in that first episode. So I've been very fortunate that I've had a lot of support from people in my life, and also people that I have come into my life for this podcast, both listening to it, which goes a long way, sharing it, and even just people just guesting on the show and giving their time. So thank you to everyone who's contributed. Of course, I think the person I want to thank the most, which I'll get to do in part 3 of this episode, is Jeremy Schmidt. One of my best friends, my partner here at Super NPC Radio. We founded this podcast network together, and without going on his show, I would have never created this show and started the Call Me By Your Game podcast. So huge thanks goes out to him, not just for helping me get off the ground, but the effort he puts into every episode. He puts all of these together for me, including the bonus episodes I do on the Patreon every month. So shout out to you, Jeremy. Really appreciate you. I'm going to plug it later, but go listen to his podcast, Video Games a Comedy Show, wherever you get yours. Huge thanks also goes out to my guests specifically. It might seem like an easy thing to come on here and talk to me for an hour and a half about a meaningful game, and recall memories from your life, but it is still time that people are giving to me, and that they I guess essentially donate to the show to take out of their busy lives and come on, chat with me, be a little vulnerable sometimes. It's not what the show always ends up being, but sometimes it goes there. And so we've had somewhere around 200 guests, probably not exactly 200 up until this point. So thank you to everyone who has been on the show and returned. And part of what we're going to preview later is we're going to have guests coming back for their own solo episodes after teasing that, I think, since the beginning of the podcast. So thank you to the guests. Thank you to our patrons, too. I know I talk about the Patreon at the beginning and end of every show, but truly that's just like a whole nother level of support, which is the people who essentially tip us every month, whether it's $1, $5, or $10, to get bonus content and really support us. There's something that I do every time someone joins our Patreon, which is, and this isn't an original idea, I actually got this idea from being a patron of the Min-Max show, which is an amazing podcast I'm going to plug later too. They do a great job of market research and finding out where their guests are coming from, why they support them at a specific tier, and I reach out the same way to our patrons on our network, and some of them they want to support us because they like our content and they found us. In fact, a lot of people, but there's also a good number of supporters on Patreon who support us because they like us and they want to see us do well and they want us to be able to make more things. So you never know where a patron's going to come from or where someone is, or how they find you and they want to support you, but it means a lot. And so thank you to everyone who supported us over there. We've thankfully had a lot of growth over the last few years. We're still quite small and hoping to grow even more. But yeah, and I hope people are enjoying all of the bonus content that you get every week. So truly, to all of our patrons, all the toads we've got out there, thank you so much. It really means so much, whether you listen on the Patreon feed or on this bad boy right here. And then, like I've kind of already thanked is thank you to the listeners. Truly, the show wouldn't happen without you. I would be less motivated to do it if I was just kind of doing this into a void, which sometimes it can still feel like that, because while this show has had a lot of growth, especially in the last year, we're not an enormous show. We're about 3 times bigger than we were a year ago. For me, that's going from having 100 to 125 listens per episode to 3,000 to 300 to 450 listens, and sometimes a lot more than that. That's just about our average, is that probably 300, 400 mark. So while we've grown a lot, truly every listen matters. So if you listen to the show, thank you. I know that there hasn't been a ton of change outside of me probably maturing as a guest over the years. So if it feels monotonous or whatnot, that's just what the show is. No one's expressed that. I feel like I'm like getting ahead of, like softening a blow that's to come for myself, even though I haven't actually experienced that at all. But thank you for listening. Even though like it's you still get me every episode, and it's and even if you have been listening for a long time, you probably know what to expect. Generally, what's coming from me and how I interview guests and have people on. So again, thank you to everybody who supports the show. It means so much. And one extra thank you. I know I'll get into this on part 3 too, but thank you to Glenn J. Glenn is an artist, I believe, who lives in Australia, who found me on Twitch in the first year of this show and just sent me some inspiring cover art for the show. So I had originally drawn my own cover art for the podcast. For the video version, I'm going to include that at this moment so you can see the original art that I made. Truly taking the art or the poster from Call Me By Your Name, the movie, and putting Mario in the Army Hammer position and myself in the Timothée Chalamet spot. And Glenn went and made just like an amazing piece of art. It's still like one of my favorite things to look at in the world. That's, you're going to see that all on the video portion. And if you're in the podcast feed, just the audio version, you're going to see that as well. Thanks to you as well, Glenn. I also today wanted to just take some time, as I said, and tell you a little bit more about me. We get to know the guests pretty well on this show. And I think through that, you get to know me as well. And if you're, an avid listener, you probably, know who I am and the stuff I do. But I haven't always just been a video game podcaster. I actually do a lot outside of this space. I'm a bit of what I always refer to as a jack of all trades and a master of none. And that's because I think I'm good at a lot of stuff, but I don't know if I'm great at any of them. And I also enjoy so many things that I always like to try my hand at different things that sort of catch my fancy or my interest. So a lot of you probably know, as I state almost every episode because of the guest pool that we have on the show, is that I'm a writer, I'm an actor, and an improviser out in Los Angeles. I'm from Modesto, California, which is a town up in the Central Valley of California as well. So I only live about 5 hours from where I grew up. But I moved out here originally after going to school for filmmaking. I moved here, and I actually talk about this quite extensively talked about it recently on a podcast, the Long Form Conversations podcast. It's a whole improv podcast hosted by David Luong. Great show. If you're an improv person at all, I recommend checking it out. It's great. But I was on an episode. I talk about my whole background and how I got into this, so I'll spare some of the details. But all that is to say that at this point, we talk about improv a lot. I'm a performer at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. It's one of the biggest improv theaters in the world, and it's a place that I started studying at 10 and a half years ago at this point, and even had seen a show at like 3 years before that. So it's a really amazing place where a lot of just like the most talented writers and actors and just creative people in general come together and learn and do improv, and I'm lucky enough to be one of those people who gets to perform on the UCB stage every week, every other week now on Herald Night. Funny enough that this episode is coming out and I'm recording it at the end of the season at UCB, so I may not be a performer there in a couple weeks. Who knows? I could get the axe because they're shuffling teams around. But if you're in the LA area and you've never come to see me do improv, keep an eye out. Check out my social media because there may be shows coming up But that's a place that like I've really gotten to come into my own and also just meet like the most amazing people, and I would say like a huge fraction of my close friend group. But yeah, improv is like, if you don't know me from this podcast, you probably know me from, and that's an if you know me, then you probably know me from seeing me or hearing about me at UCB. I was on a team called Jet Set there for a while, my first Herald team, and most recently I've been on a team called XOXO. Love both of those groups. XOXO, we'll see. That's the team I'm on currently. We'll see if we get brought back and renewed. It's hard to say. But that's like, the improv of it all. But through improv, I've also, been very fortunate to sort of fall into acting in that way, both acting in friends projects, whether it's short films, series, music videos, you name it. But I'm a commercial actor. So that's actually outside of doing this series of podcasts. That's probably what takes up the majority of my time, is auditioning for and acting in commercials. I acted in my first commercial in 2018. It was actually coincidentally the first audition I ever went on, I booked, which doesn't happen. And also, if you were to look at all the auditions I go on every year, I book less than 5% of them, very, very low. It's a tough business out here, but I booked my first ever commercial, a commercial for this company called Old Smoky Moonshine, where I basically show up and to a wedding late, and everyone's like, "Oh no, here's the late guy," but I brought the cool moonshine, so everybody likes me. It was really fun. It's also a very affirming time where I was like, "Oh, I can absolutely do this, and this is something that like I want to do and love doing." Just acting, professionally. I'm gonna put a link as well. I've got like a series of these commercials I've done. I'm gonna put links in the show notes to the ones that I at least have access to that you can see. So that was the first one I ever did back in 2018. I finally got representation commercially in 2019, the next year, and I last year had my best year ever. I got to act in 3 spots, which is huge, and one of which, like, it was a Roomba commercial that, like, so many people I knew saw. I, funny enough, never saw it on TV, but a lot of people saw it and would, like, send me pictures of it on their screen or just text me that they had seen it. So that was really fun, and I just did a spot last week that I hope comes out sometime soon. I hope I make the cut, but yeah, it was fun. So commercial acting is something that I really love doing, and that, the audition process and, just hoping to go out for those sort of things can be frustrating and draining, but I do really enjoy it, and I'm really thankful for it. I'm also, a writer and an editor. I do a lot of freelance editing on the side. I also edit a podcast on the side with a couple of past guests on the show. Jeremy Colhane and Angela Girotana co-host a podcast with Kylie Brakeman and Patrick McDonald called Artists on Artists on Artists on Artists. It's one of the funniest podcasts in the world, I think. It's basically a roundtable style podcast where they improvise as different, like, sort of corners of like the arts industry, whether they're improvising as like on-set teachers, or they're improvising as clowns. I don't even think they've done one like that. Or canceled YouTubers is one I just edited for them that'll be coming out this week. It's an amazing podcast. It's so funny. I love doing it. It's one of those things that it's so fun to do that it doesn't feel like work, but I am glad to get paid to do it. It's an absolute blast. So I do that as well. And then, outside of all of that and streaming, which everybody knows about, if you listen to the show, I also have recently gotten into narrative writing for video games. Past guest of the show, Heather Woodward, and I, Heather is a writer for over at Respawn for the Apex series, and Heather was nice enough to let me take her to lunch over the summer last year and just pick her brain on how to possibly work in that industry, because while I like commercial acting and I like writing, it's not exactly something that I can fully sustain myself on. So I've just been trying to be open to like more ways to use my abilities and sort of was very curious about writing for games, and next thing you know, she recommends me a narrative writing class at the UCLA extension course, which anybody can sign up for. So I took this narrative class in the fall. I've talked about this a bit on the podcast, but with past guest as well, Nick Park, good friend of the show, we participated in a game jam where we made a game over a weekend and then polished it. It's called Farewell Fava. You can play it on itch.io. That was so much fun too. We polished it over the fall. I made a couple other games in that class. And then now, Nick, myself, Jacques Moladu, former guest, and then our friend Tyler Hutchinson, we're working on a new game called Send in the Clown that I'm really excited for. It's basically going to be one big level as a proof of concept, where it's essentially like the original pitch was that it's Hitman meets like a clown. So instead of like going into an event and having a target that you got to assassinate, you have a target that you have to make laugh at an event you're hired at. But it actually ends up being a lot more like Untitled Goose Game, or sort of one of those classic point-and-click adventures, like the Monkey Island series, I would say, that, I'm really fond of. But that's been so much fun. Those three, Jacques, Tyler, and Nick, are just amazing. They're so creative, they're so funny, and they're so just good at what they do. I love those guys, and I love working with them. So stay tuned for Send in the Clown. We hope to finish it in the next couple months and just get it out there. And then other than that, I'm just honestly looking to work in the games industry. I'm looking to write for games. Fortunately, I can't program. I've been trying to teach myself, but when it comes to concepts, puzzles, narrative writing, and just like dialogue and joke pitching and characters and all that stuff, it's so much fun. It's been so cool to use my like TV writing abilities and my sketch comedy abilities for video games. It's been so much fun. So again, keep an eye out for Send in the Clown. I don't know. That's some information about me. You can follow me on social media if you want to learn more as well. But I think you got a pretty good idea of who I am at this point. I guess if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and ask. I think the way I'm going to close out part 1 of the 200th episode special is by recommending other podcasts to you, the listener. So if you're like, I can't get enough of video game podcasts, I listen to all of Connor's stuff. I listen to like so much that I'm bored. I need something in my ears. Then I got some recs for you. Of course, there's the entire suite of Super NPC Radio podcasts, the network that this show is under, the one that Jeremy and I founded. First and foremost, if you are a listener of the show and you're like, I don't have the money, or I just don't really want to subscribe to the Patreon because I'm just not really interested in that, but you'd still like to see and hear some of the bonus content that we do here on the network, we have a free Games Club feed. There's a link in the show notes to our legacy clubs. So those clubs that we did in years past are Resident Evil Games Club, the Zelda Games Club, and now our Metal Gear Solid Games Club. We're releasing those episodes on a free feed for you to listen to. So while we have new content that is behind a paywall currently, we want people to listen to our stuff first and foremost. So, so basically a couple years after they release that we did them originally, they've started releasing on a free feed. The entire Zelda series is out, the entire Resident Evil series, and then Metal Gear Solid, I think there's just one or two more episodes to release for that series, and then our Donkey Kong series will roll out after that. All of those previous games clubs as well, they're different than what we do currently. What we're doing now is we cover a game over 3 months, basically, where we treat it like a book club, where we basically play a chapter or so at a time, and we meet on a podcast and discuss it. So that's what we do now. It allows for a much more thorough look at the game. We don't skip over little parts that we want to give attention to. Previously, we would play a game and do a podcast on it. So more of an overview show, a lot like the co-op series that I do still to this day. But to differentiate from that and to change up the format, we've been doing it differently for a little over a year now. So after the Donkey Kong Games Club, you can enjoy a whole series about Super Mario 64, then the original Pokemon games, Sonic Adventure, and Resident Evil 2 Remake. And we've just finished our Mass Effect Games Club. So expect that probably in like a year and a half or 2 years at this point. But pretty soon on the Patreon, we're going to be diving into BioShock. We're covering that game for Q2 of this year. So yeah, I guess that's a plug for you, is if you want to follow along for our BioShock Games Club and play along, interact with us, help influence our content, subscribe at patreon.com at the $5 DJ Toad tier. That's at Super NPC Radio, of course. That's where those episodes air, is at the $5 tier and up. Anyway, that's enough about the Games Club. I'm just going to kind of rapid fire these podcasts. The other ones on our network, we've got Video Games, a Comedy Show, and Reactivators. You can find those in their own public podcast feed. Swap, Michael McCuller's new Rumors and Leaks podcast is available on our Patreon a week in advance at the $10 Engineer Toad tier, but it's also available on YouTube as well. I also want to recommend some of these podcasts I've been on or have had guests on my show from. I'm not involved with all of them, but full disclosure, I am affiliated with some of them, just a few actually. We've got the Nintendo Cartridge Society, the Get Played podcast, the Super Gamer Boys, Triple Click, Min Max, Game Maker's Notebook, Playscape LA, Eggplant, Axe of the Blood God, Kane and Rinse, and Retronauts. There's a million video game podcasts out there, but those are the ones that, with the exception of like Playscape LA, which was a podcast that basically ran for a season and ended, but I loved it so much, hosted by Teddy Deef, who worked actually on Hyper Light Drifter, that game right there that I've got. Amazing podcast. But the rest of them, they still air new episodes, and almost all of them, if not all of them, weekly. So check them out. You can look them up to see what they're about. I'm not going to go through each one at this point, but yeah, check out those podcasts. I'll have a link to them in the show notes as well, so you can just click and find it. Oh, and the last one I wanted to mention, the newest podcast that video game podcast that I've like really come to enjoy is Into the Aether. It's a podcast hosted by two people named Steven and Brendan. I forget their last names. But this is a show that I was looking on a podcast website called Listen Notes, which you can see how podcasts do on their listens, like the top percentages of how well they do compared to other ones. This podcast is the top one. When you look at my page for Call Me By Your Game, it's the most recommended podcast next to ours. And it's not the same type of show at all, but I have really grown to love what these two people have to say about games and just their energy and their camaraderie. So Steven and Brendan, if you're listening out there, thank you for your show. I just love the energy you bring. It's really unique, and I think for me, like you'll probably hear from me later. And I keep saying that because this is the last part of the podcast I've been recorded this totally out of order. Thanks again for listening to the show as we get into the rest of the parts of this 200th episode celebration. I love doing this podcast. It's so easy for me to do because I love connecting with people about anything, and turns out video games has just become the conduit of how I'm able to do that. So yeah, thank you so much to everyone who's listened to the show. Truly, if you like it, share it with a friend. Or check us out on one of our social media apps. And if you like us more, you can find our Patreon. But share the show with a friend. If you think they would like, my interviews with people about video games, that would mean a lot. Because I'm always looking for more people like yourself to find the show. And yeah, I think there was one other thing I was going to say. But at this point, folks, I can't remember it. And I'm 30 minutes into talking just to myself. So why don't I go ahead and move on, and we'll go ahead and just slide on in to part 2 of the 200th episode special. Welcome back to episode 200 of Call Me By Your Game. For this segment, I'm going to be listing my top 10 favorite games that have debuted since the podcast started, which was November 2019. Looking at my actual personal top 10, it's so heavily riddled with like nostalgia picks that I wanted to highlight a few of my favorites that have come out, since the pod, when I really became a fully formed gamer. But I'm not going to do that alone. I brought on a little friend of mine to do this with me. Please welcome, was on this podcast as early as episode 4 to discuss Guitar Hero with me. It's none other than Matt Apodaca.
What's up?
Dude, Matt, hold on.
I'm bringing you back.
Can I try that?
Yeah.
What's up?
What's up?
I'm trying to, hopefully we can have as many like 90s, 2000s catchphrases in this episode as possible.
Did I do that?
Oh, now that might be 80s, but we're going to basically, let's make this catchphrase heavy. Matthew, welcome to the podcast, dude. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, buddy. Happy to be here. This was, I think by all accounts, yours and mine, a torturous exercise.
Yes.
This was so hard, but exciting to do and interesting to look back as well, because like you kind of forget.
Yeah.
Even where some of these games came out even too. So like looking at like the releases from 2019 to the end of last year was like going down memory lane.
It's tough. I want to talk too about, before we get into it, like how we went about making our lists and maybe some like details of the process, because the people love a peek behind the curtain.
They love behind the curtain. They love to see how the sausage is made, and it's just it's exciting stuff. They love that behind the scenes, a look behind the scenes,
And who better to give it to them than you and I? Before we do this, Matt, I wanted to bring you on for a segment on this very special occasion of episode 200 for a lot of reasons. But I was thinking about it and looking back at our friendship. I'm willing to bet we talk about it on your first episode of Call Me by Your Game, which I listened. Anytime I go back and listen to any of those that were done in person or kind of early, I sound so rushed. And I've just really, what I'm trying to say is that I'm bragging about myself developing as a podcast host.
Hey, sure.
So I haven't listened to yours recently out of fear of how I'll sound. But I think we probably talked about it. I think that you're one of my best buds. We connect heavily over video games. We're talking about them, folks. I mean, the people don't see it, but we're texting about them all the time.
Oh yeah, and you won't see it.
No, there's no Patreon level where you get to see our texts.
Yeah, you don't get to be a third person in the text chat that just gets to watch.
Yes, no one's holding. If you hold one of us at gunpoint, you're gonna have to shoot us, folks, because neither of us are giving those things up.
Yeah, and maybe if it's both of us, Connor last. Actually, me first.
Like you go first, or
shoot me
that's
first.
So selfless. And I will take you up on that. But games are something that have been just such a connecting point for us in our friendship. I think one of the earliest things I remember talking to you about was when, because you would occasionally sub as a manager when I was interning at UCB back in 2016, and I remember you brought your 3DS once and you were playing, I assume, like Sun or Moon.
I think I remember this. This was Pokemon Sun. Yes, that's right. I remember that.
So immediately I was like, all right, target acquired, so to speak. And I'm not talking about the Pokemon. I'm talking about Matthew. But I was like, okay, this is something that we can talk about. And then I'm sure we talked about games a bit, but when the Nintendo Switch debuted,
that's right,
you came over to my home the evening that this thing came out. And I think that was really the kickoff of like games as like a connection point for us.
Yeah, because I remember you so graciously, you told me that you were getting the Switch and that you were really excited about it, and I was like, wow, that sounds really, really cool, congrats, I don't know when I'm gonna get it. You were like, well, you should just come over and play it too.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, really? And then I was like, okay,
it's me bribing my friend to come over with a shiny new toy.
Was that the first time I had been to your place too?
It's possible. It was either the first time or one of the first, like in the, it was in the first 5 at the very least. We can agree on that. Oh, no arguments here. I do agree with that. Yes.
But I remember that was really fun. We played 1-2 Switch, right?
Yes, we did.
And I feel like we played that for a long time, because what else was out? Breath of the Wild you couldn't really do
not
as
exactly
like
a multiplayer game.
Yeah, because it wasn't just me either. It was like a couple other guys as well.
Yes.
Loomis may have stopped by at one point. Yeah.
Do you remember playing Snipper Clips that night?
I remember playing Snipper Clips as well, and I also maybe remember playing a Bomberman.
There was a Bomberman game. I think one of my friends who came over also, they got a Switch as well, and there was a new Bomberman game when the Switch came out for some reason.
Yes, yeah, and then Mario Odyssey wasn't played yet. I don't think. I don't know. Was that even a launch?
No,
Switch title?
That was 6 months later.
6 months later. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a launch title for me.
That's right.
Because when I got my Switch, Mario Odyssey was like brand new, so that was pretty exciting. But I remember that being super fun. And then I didn't get a Switch until probably like 6 months to a year after that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we had crossover, both working as reservationists at the Mozza restaurants, but I know that
you were there right after me. Yeah.
Yes, but I think it had your Switch when you were at the tail end of that, because you gave me the idea to bring mine all the time.
That's right, because I remember I at one point was bringing my 3DS also. Like I was doing that because I was like, oh, this is a little more. I could put this in my pocket, right? This is just kind of on me at all times. But with the Switch, I was like, I guess I got to bring like a backpack.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's not that big, but like it's kind of like you can't put it in your pocket, whatever.
Yes.
But I remember playing Breath of the Wild, like at work, like in between phone calls.
Yes.
And just having a blast.
We've not that this context needs to be shared, because people can probably put two and two together. We're talking about a mutual job. We're Ships in the Night app, but Matt and I both at different times worked as someone who would essentially organize and help people make reservations over the phone at a couple of restaurants in LA.
Yeah.
And Matt and our friend Victoria, also former guest of the show, Victoria Longwell.
Do you remember what game Victoria talked about?
Soul Calibur 2.
That's amazing.
And
wow.
So unexpected, and as you could probably guess, it was a game that she mostly talks about watching her brother play.
That's so funny. I just love the data. Like it's just an interesting, like, because obviously not everybody interfaces with games in the same way. A lot of people probably do experience them as a passenger, right? Mm-hmm. But like that doesn't mean that you're any less entertained by it either, right? Like
totally.
I'm sure Victoria had a blast watching.
Yeah, and it's part of like not to get on a tangent on a tangent.
Yeah,
but. That is, Victoria's episode is one that I will point people to as one of my favorites, because like there are plenty of people like ourselves, Matt, who have made games a fraction of our personality.
Yeah.
And then there are people like Victoria who played a few games growing up, and that was pretty much it. But
yes,
I love, occasionally I'll have a guest who's getting ready to come on the show, and they're like, well, I'm worried I'm not enough of a gamer, like this and that. And I'm like, if you have can talk about your experience with a game, then you're an eligible participant for the show. And ended up being an amazing episode too. So I usually am like, hey, don't worry about being a gamer. I had Victoria on.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? The thing about Victoria too, she's just a star.
Gosh, a star. I don't know if you knew this, Matthew, but she coached my Herald Team XOXO for our first year.
That's right, yeah.
Yes.
And I can't imagine being... I mean, I wish I could have been coached. Not to say that all my coaches were rough or bad or whatever, but to be coached by somebody so smart and funny and warm, just good vibes. I love Victoria.
Dude, she's the best. She's we've all been friends for such a long time at this point.
Yeah,
but
she was on my first Herald team as well.
Yes, shout out DiCaprio.
That's right.
What a time, Matthew.
What a time. Legendary squad.
And now you're both graduated too. Anyway, Victoria, you're the best. I hope to see you soon. Because we just finished the Herald season. So
that's right.
You might know this, but auditions began last night for this next round.
I didn't know this.
Yes.
I'm so out of it nowadays.
You're living that retirement life.
I'm living that retirement life. I'm happy for everybody. Doing it, it seems great. I had a regret the other day, actually.
Oh, please share. Unrelated to improv, I'm sure.
It actually was about improv.
Yeah.
It's that I'm still doing it. No, it's I I realized that the Herald season was over, and like my first thought was, I never got to see Connie's team.
Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
It's okay to have regrets. We all have them, but you know,
regrets.
who's to say? Maybe the powers that at be
I've
will.
had a few.
Don't get me started.
Hopefully the powers that be keep you guys around.
We'll see.
So I could see you guys again, because I was a fan of everybody on that squad. I only went to one Herald night this last year.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to get over there when you're not like obligated to.
Yeah, I'm kind of also just tired at 7 now.
Yes. It happens. All that being said is, I was getting us back to...
Yes.
This came from, us connecting over games. And I think after the Switch came out, that really took off. And it was just like one of a few things we would always keep in touch about. And also, I remember you being very supportive when this podcast debuted. I remember you were one of a number of people who like was immediately sharing it on social media, which like
come on,
was so kind. And it's one of those things where like, you have a bigger platform than I do, especially now, and that like helped people find the show. So belated thank you, Matt.
Well, that's really nice to hear. I hope that people my hope when I share things is that people do follow through and check it out, especially like something like this, or like when I'm on like Video Games a Comedy show or something. Like I want people to hear that, because it's like, I mean, you guys are just so funny and are also my friends. So I'm like, I want you guys to like have people enjoying your stuff too, and it's like that's that's all we can do for each other, right? But like, I also am just like, I check in and I listen to it. I'm like, oh, like I also just like it.
Yeah.
So
it's nice.
I'm sharing it because I was on it and these are my friends, but I also like it. Yeah. So that's just like, it's a bonus.
Yeah. Well, that's lovely to hear. But I do I have thought back to that moment when my podcast was first coming out, and I remember, some people shared it, but when you shared it, I was like, oh, that is so helpful. And also just like, no, I wasn't totally surprised because it's one of my freaking buds here.
Oh yeah, hell yeah, dog.
So
I'm
since
trying to
then,
think too. Well, you also had parties where it was like a normal party, like where you were like hanging out. It wasn't like just for video games.
Yes.
But there would be times where like maybe it was like, it was like me and Chuck Ma and like Edgar over or something. Maybe the N64 comes out and we play Mario Party on the N64.
Yes.
And get mad at each other.
Yes. Get very angry at how ruthless that game can.
Yeah.
How much it can turn one another against each other.
Yeah, but always good times playing games with my boys. And then you've recently too, at your new place, you've had like themed like game nights.
Yes.
Where it's like a fighting game or like a wrestling game type night, or not wrestling, racing, I mean. And that rocks. That's so fun.
It's fun.
And I always have such a good time there.
I'm so glad. It's fun to, get like friends together to play games, because I don't know what I actually think our experiences are kind of similar nowadays, or our habits, where most of my gaming, and when I say most, I mean like 95% is solo, like single player experiences. I don't play with friends as much as I'd like to. So that's honestly an excuse for me to just like play Mario Kart or get whooped in Street Fighter by somebody. I
had like a very brief window of playing Halo Infinite online.
Oh,
with friends, and I would like squad up with like Zig.
Yes,
and play Halo as like a team. Me, Zig. I think I got in there with Zach Oyama at one point.
Oh, nice.
Gosh, Iffy was one time supposed to join me and Zig, and then forgot that he had to pick somebody up at the airport. And I was like, "You're never getting on. You're just never getting on."
Yes.
And he never showed up. He's like, "I'll be there in like 30 minutes." Like, you have to go to LAX. You're not going to be on in 30 minutes.
We're going to be done by the time you're back in an hour and a half.
Yeah. But that was the only time I've ever done that, and I've been wanting to squad up. Jeremy was talking about this when I just did Video Games a Comedy show. About maybe squatting up for Helldivers 2. Yes. With our boy Charlie. And I'm like, I think I I got to get in on that. That sounds like it'd be really, really fun. But of course, I've put it down for Rebirth, which you're also playing.
This is true. Were you playing Helldivers on PS5?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard so many good things. It seems like it would be so up my alley of like a sort of fun team-based shooter. I love that stuff. Even though I've mostly been like a Halo player throughout my life, and I know this is even a totally different perspective. But yeah, I hope to hear that you three link up. I think Chuck and Teo are trying to play this thing too. So
I'll play with those guys. I'll play with any of my boys that are that are playing Helldivers 2. I'll eject Rebirth for a night. You know,
huge. I actually did have to eject the disc last night because I know I can't believe I'm admitting this on the airwaves. But I ejected it because we're finishing up our Mass Effect Games Club, and we have our final 2 episodes to record tomorrow. And I literally just had like the final mission, which is like maybe 40 minutes. And so I put it in, did that, ejected it, deleted it, and put it in Rebirth again.
Wow. An immediate delete.
Yeah. Well, I was like, I'm actually going to play Mass Effect 2 for a co-op later this year. Because I think, like we talked, like because you're on Alan Wake 2, my theme is sequels.
Oh,
for the
yes,
year,
yes.
for those bonus episodes. But anyway, to wrap that up, games are something that connect you and I. And
that's right.
You've always been so supportive and of this podcast and stuff. So I just had to have my freaking guy on.
I love it, and this was, like I was saying, it was a torturous exercise, but it was really, really fun because in the last 4 years, a lot of great games came out.
Truly. It's for as awful of a time as the industry is having.
Yes. In
so many ways, there have been some just triumphant experiences. And whittling those down to a top 10 is an impossible task. That being said, and I think you and I have become even bigger gamers over the last 4.5 years too. Like we're playing more than we ever have.
At an all-time high, certainly. Because when we were kids, and we didn't have one, I feel like there weren't as many games, and that feels like insane to say, but there just weren't as many games. And then you'd get like your game for Christmas, your game for your birthday. Tough time for me. Your birthday's not so far away from Christmas either, though.
It's true. Yeah, we're like I'm not quite like 3 weeks from Christmas like you, but I'm close enough to where I always fantasized about it being further away to like spread out those big gets. So to speak.
So I got like it's tough. A couple weeks away from Christmas. Saying that like your birthday's not that far from Christmas. It's like a full 6 months away.
Gosh, yeah, that's what I want.
It's closer than you want.
Yeah.
Anywhere near the vicinity of Christmas, too close as far as I'm concerned. You want to be like, what's the furthest away you could be from Christmas?
I guess, is that July
February
25th or June 25th?
It's probably the furthest away, but I'm thinking February.
Oh, okay. Because
like
you've forgotten about it because it's been a few months.
It's in a couple months, right? But Christmas it's in the rear view. You're not even thinking about it anymore. So it feels far.
So, okay, I see what you're saying. It's the furthest away to come, but even though you have just had one.
You won't get a good game for Christmas for your birthday if it's in January. If it's in February, you have a shot to get like a good gift.
This is like Homer Simpson logic or something. Like I see where you're coming from,
but it's insane.
Yes. Gosh. Well, Matthew, is there anything else you want to say before we hop into this exercise today?
I kind of just want to, if I could spend just another 10 minutes just like making this make sense.
Please. Yeah, let's do that for this episode.
No.
In fact, I can lead us in a little bit.
Yeah,
unless you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
No. Are we going to talk about the behind the scenes?
Yes, I would love to do that. Truly. We teed that up for the listener. They're like,
we didn't do it.
They would have felt so teased. The podcast reviews for this show would have gone in the toilet.
They're gonna. You know what the reviews would say?
Tell me.
I only saw the scenes. I didn't get any of the behind.
Yeah. Where's my special features? Come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as far as making this list goes, the way, and we can talk about whatever we want, the way that I started it was truly just like opening up a note and slapping on on a top 10 with some honorable mentions. And then like over the last week have been whittling this down. I have as well from the last few years, since I think 2020, I have been making, I have like a running notes app note listing the games I finish every year.
Me too, yes.
And so that was helpful to just like go through and be like, wait, which of these were new to that year and what is even eligible? Like, what did I even play that was new?
Right. I'm constantly updating that list.
Hell yeah, you are, brother.
I started that, but I started the list in 2020, like during the pandemic.
Yeah, same here.
Because I was like, this will only be... This will be for a finite amount of time.
How many games can I beat in these 2 weeks of lockdown?
Exactly, yeah. And then, of course it went on and is still active, even though, we've pretended it's over.
Yes.
For a long time.
The more we pretend it's over, the more real it gets.
Yes. I will say my numbers in 2021 were high, but not a lot of those games were new to 2021.
Sure. Yes.
But the my process for making the list was I also opened up a note in my notes app. So
Guys,
far
we're not afraid to use the notes app.
No,
we're kind of brave.
They're not just for apologies.
We'll
you can
probably
use them
have
for
to
other
issue one
stuff.
after this episode.
Yeah, we'll issue one. I'm sorry that I said that February is the farthest away from Christmas and your best shot at getting a gift. But what I did was, because sometimes when I'm planning the year, like when I want to know what games are coming out, I'll go straight to Wikipedia. I'm not afraid.
Sure.
And I'll open up, video games in year, right? And then I'll just scroll from January to December, see what the releases are. Sometimes it's like an incomplete list, right? Because not everything that is coming out necessarily is announced, too. And I feel like sometimes there are some indie titles that go skipped.
Yes.
That might have, unless it makes like a big splash. A lot of indie stuff not typically on there. Yeah. But what I did was then I went through 2019, made a list of all the games that I either finished or played enough to have like a strong opinion about.
Yes.
Then the same, rinse and repeat until I got to the end of 2023.
Nice.
And it was I had a running list of 50 games.
Oh boy.
That I whittled down to 10.
Dang. That's essentially 10 new games finished a year, not including the old stuff you played.
Exactly, yeah. And
wow.
I will say some of the games, I think there's like in each year, there were some games that I got to later. For example, like in the 2020 list of games released, Final Fantasy VII Remake on that list. But I just finished it this, a couple months ago. But it came out in that year, so I felt like it could get included. Will it have made my official top 10? That remains to be seen.
Ooh, remains to be seen.
Dragon Quest XI S is on the list. Did not finish that. Played it for like 15, 20 hours and loved every second of it. Fell off. Is that on the list? Who could say? But it's like it was enough. I played enough of it to at least include it as like a memory. Like I did play a lot of that.
Yes, totally.
So that was my process though.
Nice.
Yeah, that's
great. Yeah, I just started slapping stuff on there, looking through mine, and because I've known this, but it was made very apparent that because I play so many retro games for podcasts, I don't play that many new games every year.
Yeah.
2021 specifically, I looked at my list and I think I only like thoroughly played like 3 or 4 new games. This last year was a bit better, but yeah, a lot less for me. But that being said, what do you say we kick this sucker off, Matthew?
Let's do it, dog.
I'll go ahead and we'll just basically go, I guess we can go, both lists our 10s, both lists our 9s in that sort of fashion. I'll go ahead and kick it off for us.
Okay, great.
My number 10, and this is my one chance to maybe go back on my one answer, because my top 9 was actually, it wasn't easy, but I was confident. And my number 10 slot is almost could be any of my honorable mentions.
Okay.
But I'm going to list a game that I played from the year 2023 that was a pretty short experience. I maybe played 6 hours of it, but loved every second and almost couldn't put it down, and that is Cocoon.
Oh, Cocoon.
You didn't end up playing this, did you?
I did not, no.
This game is made by some of the creators of Inside and Limbo. I think one of the 2 main players in that started his own studio and made this game.
One of my favorite, Limbo and Inside, two of the great games.
This game, kind of like those, has like incredible atmosphere. The music is amazing. It's like adaptive to what you're doing. I know I had sent you previously a great Game Maker's Notebook podcast episode with Sam Lake from Alan Wake.
Yes.
They did an episode with the creator, with the sound designer of this game, of Cocoon. And it was amazing because while I was playing it, and you're trying to solve certain puzzles that feel like so obscure, like opaque, but when you solve them, you feel like you're solving a Portal puzzle. You feel so smart.
Hell yeah.
And the mechanics are so clever. But the music and the sound in particular was something I couldn't put my finger on at the time. And they sort of reinforce you making the right moves with adaptive music, which, again, at the time I didn't know, but like that's why it feels like you're solving the puzzle when you are. It's because the sound, it's almost like a Pavlovian response. Like it's good because of the sound, but you might not be able to point out that the sound is what it is. Anyway, this game, high recommend. If people out there like puzzle games, this one is amazing. It can be challenging, but I love playing as the little like moth guy. And if it's still on Game Pass, can't recommend it enough.
I'm gonna have to get in there because that's right up my alley for sure.
I'd say the next time you're looking for like a short experience, and it's not like a short arcadey experience. So if you're like, I'm in the puzzle mood, I'd say give it a shot.
Hell yeah.
But that's after doing the explanation right there, I feel really good about this pick.
Okay, that's because you loved it.
Yes, and I was agonizing over. It was my number 3 of the year last year. If that's any hint as to what's to come.
Wow.
But I was, like I said, agonizing over that 10th spot. Now I feel extremely good about it.
Well, that rules. Should I say my number 10? I'm trying to make sure I get the right subtitle right. Let me see. Okay, yes. Okay, I was right. So my number 10 spot is a game from the year, it's from the year 2021.
Ooh.
And this is it's a sequel to a franchise that I love, that I've played a lot of the games in the franchise, not all of them. Certainly the first 3 I really, really loved on the PlayStation 2, and this is a PlayStation 5 sequel. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
Wow. I was wondering if you were going to say, well, I won't say what I was wondering just in case it comes, but amazing pick. You love your action sort of platformers with mascots, don't you?
I love a mascot platformer. That is home to me. That is good. That is good shit.
Oh.
And I love those guys. Those are my guys, Ratchet and Clank. I mean, I loved Jack and Daxter, Sly Cooper, all the PlayStation 2 mascot platformers have a soft spot in my heart. But those are my guys, and that game is so funny and so well realized, and Insomniac did such an amazing job with it. In particular, the traversal feels great, but like you can go in between these like rifts in time and space, and you can be in one area and be then a completely different area in the next, and that stuff paved the way for, I feel like, the traversal in Spider-Man 2. You needed to do that first before they could get into like switching seamlessly between Peter and Miles, and then just like being in the same New York City. But I really loved that game. It's gorgeous. It looks like the best of the best like Pixar like movie type animation that you've just ever seen, but in this just beautiful, funny, exciting video game, and that's one of the all times right there for me.
This remains a glaring omission of my PlayStation 5 experience.
Wow.
And it's still a game that people point to because, this generation's been very strange from mostly on the PlayStation and Xbox side of it, on how, most games they make most games for both platforms.
Yes.
And this was one that was exclusive to the PS5, and that they were doing things like you're mentioning, like hopping between the dimensions.
Yes.
That people still point as like, okay, that's something the PS5 can do that like sets it apart. We just don't see a lot of it. So it remains one I really want to play at some point.
You won't regret it. It's really, really great. If you want to borrow it, I'll let you borrow it. It's really, really good. Yeah.
I would love that. And Rebirth, I will eject you for this game.
Don't stop playing Rebirth. Finish Rebirth, and then when you have it's not super long. It's like 15 hours. You can get through it in a couple weekends.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Very nice, Matt. Your number 10, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. I'll go ahead and do my number 9 now.
Hell yeah.
My number 9 is a game that I think probably my most played game in the year of 2020, and that is Super Mega Baseball 3. Are you familiar with this franchise at all?
I've heard of this. I feel like I see friends playing it on Switch, like online.
Yes. Greg Smith is like a big fan of this
That's
series
who I
as
see
well.
playing it the most.
This game came out in like, I think, early summer or late spring of 2020, and as people will know on this podcast, I'm a huge baseball fan. I've made, I think, 3 different summers. I've done baseball spotlights where I've talked about good baseball games just because I've needed to get it out of my system. Mm-hmm. And my favorite baseball series of all time is the children's computer series, Backyard Baseball.
That's right.
This, although I've played more like actual, simulation-based baseball titles in my life as well, but this game is my first entry into the series. Really threads the needle, I thought, so well between like the cartoony sort of fun personality of the Backyard Baseball series, while also making a game that is so fun to play and so adaptive to like whatever skill level you are. It has this feature in this game which maybe it's more common now, but at the time felt kind of like a novelty, where you can adjust, of course, the difficulty slider. It's not just like easy, medium, or hard.
Okay.
But you can adjust it by a specific number from 0 to I think maybe 80 or 100. But whatever the scale is, that's great. But you can even, let's say, Matt, you're playing this game and you're like, pitching is really easy, but I'm finding hitting to be difficult. You can adjust the specific sliders for that as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. This game also like totally fed into my the joy that I get out of creating like custom teams and editing and creating players, including, of course, myself. I as Cons McDuck, as I was named for this game. But even outside of that, all the players in this game, these like sort of some randomly generated, some intentionally by the developers, are all these like, they all have strange names. There's men and women who play, and it's just just full of personality. It's got the Riz, as kids might say, Matthew.
Oh, wow, it has Riz?
Yeah, so might tip you over. But anyway, I really can't say any good enough statements about this game. It has since come out. There has been a sequel that came out last year. I did not buy it, though.
Okay.
But this game, truly, I put probably 100 hours between that summer and that fall. And so Super Mega Baseball 3 for me is my number 9.
I'm gonna have to check that out because every time there's a new MLB The Show, I'm always like, is this the one that I get and that I play? And then it was on Game Pass last year.
Yes.
And I don't know if they're doing the same thing this year. It must, I think.
Maybe.
But I don't know. But I played it a little bit and was like, this is hard and kind of boring.
I am not a fan of the show. The show is more of what they would call a simulation-based sports title.
Yeah.
And the Super Mega series is also splits the difference between simulation and arcade, where it feels like a really good middle ground where the baseball that's happening feels like baseball, but it's not so hyper simulated that you are feeling like you're actually having to be a pro to play well.
Okay.
So it's a fun one. Turn the difficulty down and have a blast. It's good stuff.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 9.
Yes.
Look, this was, I feel like I don't have as many on my list. I don't have as many deep cuts. I will preface by saying
me neither, dude. My deep cut was Cocoon.
Okay. Well, I don't feel like Super Mega Baseball is a deep cut to a certain sect of gamers. 'Cause I hadn't heard. I've seen people. I've heard you talk about it just now, and I've seen Greg Smith playing it.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's true. Proof's in the pudding.
But so a lot of my games are you'll have heard about these, and this one in particular, you've heard about potentially twice.
Ooh,
once when it came out, and once when they fixed it. Cyberpunk 2077 is number 9 on my list from the year 2020 and the year 2023, baby.
Wow. As we hopped on, I was just my brain was spinning, and I was like, a game I haven't considered that might be on Matt's list? This one.
Yeah, this was, look, I finished it at launch.
I forget
It's interesting to think about because I'm currently, where I live, I've lived here the longest of anywhere I've lived that's not my family home.
My goodness.
And so I was just like, when did I get this game? And I lived here.
Yes.
I lived here when it came out, and I have been playing it only in this house. Just something that I was just thinking about and wrestling with. That's kind of an interesting fact, truly just for me. But
or the Matt heads out there.
Or the Mad Head's like, gosh, when did Matt play this game and where? I
Your
wonder where.
Wikipedia article is being updated at this point.
Yeah, that's right. But I finished it at launch and thought it was dumb, kind of, but fun. And, but I liked the story and I liked the gameplay enough. But some of the stuff in it was obviously broken, right? But in some of this, and some of the stuff is dumb. And still is kind of dumb because the internal politics of the game don't really add up. And there's this, but I think that could just be that it's a Eastern European studio trying to simulate American politics, but
sure.
It also rocks. It is it was really funny to be playing it when it was broken and have cars fall out of the sky while you're driving, right? That's not ideal, and no game should ship in that condition. Especially if you're paying full price. These developers also were put through fucking hell, both during production of the game, during crunching on this game to get it out in the state that it was released in, and then online, with the backlash and stuff. So that's not cool.
Yeah, no, not at all.
I'm realizing there's a game that's not on my list.
that you're like,
I'm
oh
upset.
no.
I'm upset, but it's all right. The list stands. No changes. But Cyberpunk 2077 then got a rebirth, if you will, and with the Phantom Liberty DLC and the 2.0 patch, and I played it. I started a new game when the patch came out, and it was like a completely different experience. I played, my first V was a male V, and then I played the game a second time. I've beaten this game twice.
Dang.
I beat it as a female V in the second run, and I don't really go back to games like this.
Yeah.
I haven't replayed a game that isn't Kingdom Hearts 2 in in forever. It's just like not something that I do that much. Or Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Those are the two games that I play when I need to replay a game. But this was like, I loved it, and then there's like stuff in it that I haven't finished yet that I'm going to go back and do. Like I need time in the year which I think we're going to get this year, by the way. I think there's going to be a bit of a drought this year. I think
so. And people were saying that early on in the year, and I was pushing back saying like, well, this is always how it is at the start of the year. We haven't even seen presentations from studios, but now I think all these people are correct, and I was wrong.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a slim year, but the games that come out will be pretty time consuming. Like Rebirth is going to take some time, but then also later this month, at the end of March, we have Dragon's Dogma 2, which looks pretty cool, and Rise of Ronin, which I think looks pretty awesome.
Dang.
And those look like they're 50-hour plus,
yes,
huge games. So maybe it'll be fewer games, but longer experiences. Yeah. But the Phantom Liberty expansion for Cyberpunk 2077 fucking rules.
Yeah,
it is so fun and funny, but it's also, they figured out how to make it dumb in like a fun way and not like dumb that in a way that sucks. The plot of Phantom Liberty is basically like an 80s action movie. It's Escape from New York.
Yeah.
It's so funny, and like I love it. I just think it's great. Great performances from Idris Elba and Keanu Reeves. And the fact that they got Keanu to do more stuff is so funny and good. But it was I loved that game. At the end of the day, at the end of finishing this new version of it, I think they stuck the landing. I wish it had come out that way.
Yeah.
But having played it twice, I think it deserved a spot. It deserved a spot on the list, I thought.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. What a title. I loved your episode too. I haven't even played this game, but I listened to the whole played, we play, you play for the Phantom Liberty part at least. So good, Matthew. You're number 9, Cyberpunk 2077. My number 9, or sorry, my number 8 at this point. I'm wondering if this is on your list because we'll see. And it's a game that I think out of all these games, this is the one that I played for the shortest amount of time because I just absolutely ate it up. This is another game from 2020, and that is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 Remake.
It's in the list of 50. Yeah, it was it was in contention. But what a banger.
Dude, so good. I was truly thinking about actually trying to make this as close as I could as like the 10 games that I enjoyed the most, and I think I played this all in a week and a half or something. I loved it. There's not much more that I can say about it because I did do one of the earliest co-op episodes ever on it. In fact, a lot of these I've done episodes on. But yeah, it was amazing. It was a great way to go back and experience the maps of those first two games with even more stuff fleshed out. With all I love seeing the classic skaters as old dudes. I loved having the new skaters in there as well. A lot of new music, a lot of the old music. It's just, if you're a Tony Hawk fan and you haven't played 1+2 Remake, what are you doing?
Yeah, well, it's because it played exactly how you remembered it playing too. It's like I love that game, and I would just pop it in like in between like games. Like I would finish something up and be like, you know what? Let me go wreck the warehouse real quick. Like let me just
why not? Yes.
Let me just do like see if I can beat my time.
Yeah.
I think I could do the warehouse in like 47 seconds.
Yeah.
Like all of it.
That's wild.
And that's like not even the fastest I've ever seen, but I think I could do it in like 47 seconds. Because you get 2 minutes.
Yes.
To do all of it, and that's like a lot of time. Like you can do a lot in that 2 minutes. And then I think Jack Black was Officer Dick in the School 2.
I forgot about that.
Which is just fun.
But yeah, this is also, it's one of my favorite series ever. It's number 3 is my personal favorite, but I can recognize that I think 2 is probably the best. But yeah, that's my number 8. 1+2 remake. How about your number 8?
My number 8, look, me saying look before all these. a lot of games that come out are, sequels. Mm-hmm. Sequels sell. And this game had a huge shadow to live up to. Had some giant shoes to fill. Whatever the phrase, pick your phrase, doesn't matter. Had a lot to live up to.
Yes,
and it did, and then some. I think, especially with the free DLC that dropped at the end of last year.
Oh,
God of War Ragnarok, dog.
Yes.
God of War Ragnarok is number 8. Number 8.
Nuts.
And a list of 10 whittled down from 50. Absolutely psychotic. Number 8. In any other year, like God of War Ragnarok was probably, it wasn't even my game of the year in 2022. It was close probably, but it was up there. Now in this list spanning from 2019 to 2023, it is number 8 on the list. Shocking.
Bonkers. A game that you and I and a couple other friends, almost said Mike Christian, and Nick Costanza. There's a co-op episode that's on the Patreon still that will come out for free at some point. That we did a whole episode on this amazing game. Mm-hmm. And the crazy thing is, Matt, it's not even on my list. It's like it was one of those that could have been number 10, and I just didn't find room for it.
It's. I just love that that franchise is so near and dear to me. I love all those games almost equally. Yeah. Like I just love all of them, and I felt like I had to include it, especially because I loved the Valhalla DLC. Just a really, really great execution, really fun, free DLC that I just loved, and can't wait to see what comes next from that team. I know that Sony Santa Monica is working on a non-God of War title also, which is really, really exciting because I think they make a lot of great stuff, and I'd be excited to see them try to do something else.
Oh, that would be cool.
But I hope there are more continued adventures for Kratos and boy.
But to your point, though, this game was just a massive triumph. I think this game wasn't the one I'm about to mention is not from this time period, this arbitrary time period for this exercise, but I do think I prefer 2018, but kind of like a couple other games that I'm going to talk about today. I think that Ragnarok does do a few things better than the original, but the original does a few things better than Ragnarok. It's just that I liked what the original package a little better. It like barely beats it out. Awesome though, Matt. You're number 8.
My number 8.
God of War Ragnarok. Well, I'll go to my number 7, and the top 7 is a bloodbath for me. My number
sucks.
7. What'd you say?
I said, yeah, this sucks.
It's so tough. I'm gonna have so many regrets, but my number 7 is a game from 2022, the first game in the series that I've ever actually completed, even though I'm a fan of the series, and that is The Return to Monkey Island.
Wow.
The point-and-click adventure game from this game was special because the two of the original creators, Ron Gilbert and Dave Grossman, came back to the franchise to make this. I don't think they had worked on one since, at least Gilbert hadn't worked on one since the second game in the whole entire series. But, I did a co-op episode on this. In fact, I'm literally looking at this. There's only 2 games remaining that I haven't done episodes on. So I won't have to belabor the point. All that to say is this game is so funny. It's so charming. It really makes the point-and-click adventure genre palatable by giving you, the hint system was great. The new art style that they did was amazing. I love Return to Monkey Island and sort of the conclusion that they came to for the series. And if anybody is out there and likes the series as well, I just watched do you know the YouTube channel No Clip, Matt? The documentary?
I've heard of this. I've not watched any No Clip, but I'm aware of it.
There is some good stuff there. I think their most recent video was on the development of Return to Monkey Island. So if you're a fan, go watch that. It's great stuff.
I'm subscribing right now, dog.
Oh, hell yeah. But yeah, that's my number 7, Return to Monkey Island. How about yours?
My number 7, this game really cracked my brain open, and it came out in a weird it came out in the year 2019. But became like a prescient piece of media.
Yes.
And I had to put this on this list because I didn't finish it in the year it came out. It came out at the end of 2019. So I think I finished it sometime in 2020, maybe in 2021 I might have finished it.
Interesting.
But this was, I love all this guy's games. This is, of course, Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding.
Yes, I knew we might see Sam Bridges on this list.
I'm Sam. I just love it. It's a very divisive game. It's not combat heavy. It's a lot of walking around and just dropping off packages, but it rocks. It's fucking great. It's very weird. The world is interesting. The performances are nuts.
Yeah.
And it just has everything in it is interesting. And that's just a fact.
Yeah.
It's if the game's not for you, I get it, totally fine. Nobody could say it's boring, or maybe you could say it's boring because you don't like walking around. But
I was gonna say
you can't say that it's not interesting because it's just, I don't know. He's just like a weird guy, that Kojima, isn't he? And he made this game about being alone and honoring our delivery people, and that there was this thing in the game called timefall that ages you in a weird way, and you shouldn't be outside so you don't experience it. All before the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, came and reared its ugly head. And so this guy,
did it again.
He just knows stuff. But I think the game is awesome, and I'm really excited for the sequel.
Yes.
And I just, he's one of those guys that I'll always be at least a little bit interested in whatever he's working on.
Totally.
Because it's gonna be interesting. You might not like it, but I'll always check it out no matter what it is. I think he's a genius.
I love that.
Yeah.
This is a game I own on PS4 that I dipped my toe into, and I was like, I like this, and then got distracted by something else.
Well, ain't that how it is?
It really is. That's your number 7. On to my number 6. Yet again, another game that I did a co-op episode on. This came out in the year 2021. We're actually getting back-to-back 2021 games.
Wow.
And that is, I don't know if you played this game. Did you ever play Deathloop, Matt?
Connor, it's on... Wait, it wasn't on my list, but it's in my honorable mentions.
Oh, nice.
I fucking loved Deathloop.
Dude, I ate this up, this sort of like immersive sim, first-person narrative shooter, I never played a game by Arcane before, but in that fact, I remember them advertising this game at like showcases so much that I got actually annoyed and turned off by it because it kept coming up at every like PlayStation showcase.
Yeah.
And then I watched a trailer right before it came out, and I was like, that seems interesting. And dude, it was like it would have been my game of the year if I hadn't played the next game on my list. Truly like right after it. But Deathloop, I loved it, and it's a game that I don't want to play for years so that I can replay it and it be almost as if I never played it, because there are certain things that are going to be hard to forget that are sort of the big twists. But I can't speak highly enough about this game.
I really loved what I played of it, and I'll tell you how much I played of it, Connor. 99% of it. I got all the way to basically the end, like the last loop.
Yes.
And put it down because whatever the next big game was that year came out, and I just got lost in it.
Dude.
And never went back to it and never finished it.
Well, you pretty much experienced it. I do remember being on that last loop, or that last, basically the last, because it segments days into 4 parts. I was on the last day, and I had you essentially have like 3 lives.
Yeah.
And I had all 3 going into the last level, and I ended the level with 1 and like barely got out of there. It was amazing.
Oof.
Anyway, Deathloop was my number 6. Matt, how about yours?
My number 6 is yet another sequel, but it's what a sequel should be. It's iterative of the first one, but it is expansive. It expands upon what was great about the first one in a very significant way, and it is shocking to me that it is only number 6 on here. It is Tears of the Kingdom. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Dude, very nice. I thought you were about to say another game that I was like, there's no way this game is his number 6. So now I know that one is still coming. Dude, I'll rip the Band-Aid now and say this is my number 1.
Wow.
But that was probably, if anybody's listening, because I've been doing you've probably seen a top 10 episode like every 5 or 6 weeks where I have old guests come on and they tell me. I always update my list if there are changes, and it has changed since I've started doing those episodes. And since I finished Tears of the Kingdom, it's my 1B favorite game of all time.
Wow.
And so listeners of the show,
1A, what's 1A?
The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask.
Yes.
I love them both for such different reasons. But it couldn't quite dethrone it, so I cheated and they're a tie. But yeah, Tears of the Kingdom it's a triumph, and it's essentially my tied for favorite game ever. But it's number 6 on your list. Anything else you want to say about it?
I mean, it fucking rips. It's fucking so good, and it should be on any other list. Here's what you got to know about what's coming on my list.
Yes.
All of the next games could be number 1.
Yes.
Like this is the thing. Like from 6 on, they all could be number 1.
Yeah.
And it's really insane how lucky we are that there are so many amazing people making amazing games, and it is it just rocks. It's just so great.
Yeah.
And there's a million things I didn't get to do in Tears of the Kingdom. I can't say I'll never go back to it, but the way games are going right now, it kind of seems like I'm done with it.
Yeah.
Because what came out right after Tears of the Kingdom was it Final Fantasy 16?
Yeah.
I dropped. I finished up my business in Tears of the Kingdom, went straight into Final Fantasy 16, and loved that. And then I've just been moving forward ever since. But Tears of the Kingdom is an absolute all-timer. Just like unbelievable. I can't believe that we're not going to get more sequels in that style or world, because I honestly I'm concerned. I do think that like it's almost a mistake. Like I think
I guess we'll see.
You can't top it, so I kind of get it. But I think I'm excited for whatever Zelda has to bring us next because they always find something fun.
Yes, I'm so excited. And I just couldn't believe how much I adored Breath of the Wild, but I couldn't believe how much more I personally, and I know this isn't the case for everyone, I thought it was even more fun for me.
It was way more fun to me.
Yeah.
I liked Breath of the Wild a lot. It took me 3 tries to get it to stick.
Yes.
But once, I think, because we went to go get the game together.
Yeah, we made a whole meal out of it.
Yeah, we got breakfast burritos and rolled up to our local game purveyor to get the game. And I think within an hour or so, I at least texted you and a couple other people. I think this is the greatest video game I've ever played. Like it's like the opening section where you're just like learning how to play the game with the new stuff.
Yeah, it's so good.
It is unbelievable, and the fact that it works at all is insane, and it just it's an incredible experience. I loved that game,
dude. Well. I couldn't. There's just so much more we could say about it, but in the interest of time, and not to put pressure on us, but I should have told you this before. I've got like 15 minutes left. So I
15 minutes left. We got to scoot.
So I was gonna say I apologize, but I'm gonna zoom. Mine, like I said, I've done mostly, and I don't want you to not share about these games.
No.
This is great when your host tells you they have 15 minutes left.
No, it's just we're having so much fun. We're going crazy over here.
It's true. I'll keep us moving by getting to our number 5. My actual game of the year of 2021, Metroid Dread.
Ooh, okay.
Now,
on my honorable mentions.
Nice. This game is the reason that Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown, is not on this list, because this sort of action exploration Metroidvania genre has really climbed the list of like the types of games I love the most, and I thought Dread was a triumph. I personally think it's the best Metroid game in the series. I could hear arguments for Super Metroid or Prime, but I loved Dread. Again, there's a whole co-op episode for patrons to go listen to, and eventually that will be out on our free feed as well. But gosh, Dread is good. It's my number 5. Matt, let's hear yours.
My number 5, Hades, my dear.
Oh!
Hades. No preamble, just simply Hades.
A glaring omission from my list because I probably only played 10 hours of it. But Matthew, what do you want to say about this game?
This game is just my shit. It is so good. It's I didn't really know. Is this a what is the genre called? Roguelites?
Yes.
Roguelikes. I'd never really played a game like that before, so I didn't know. I just didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this game scratches such a particular itch. I only beat Hades one time. Mm-hmm. I guess you have to beat him 10 times to like get the true ending of the game. But it's such a great game that I do still pick up from time to time to be like, you know what, I'll mess around with a little bit of Hades, get a couple clears out of the way, and just kind of see how far I can get. And then it turns out not very far often. But I love that game, and am eagerly awaiting Hades 2. They snapped on that one. It's unbelievable how good that game is.
It's amazing. It just blew up so big in 2020. It was great to see just how many people adored it. And it's one that I often think about going back to and giving it a real good go. That's your number 5. We're on to my number 4 for my game of the year 2022. And because I'm a freak, folks, you know it. It's Neon White.
You love Neon White. Yes.
Dude, I wouldn't shut up about this game. It was totally not something that I thought I would enjoy. I don't even know why I picked it up and played it. I can't remember the inspiration, but the first person sort of platforming with the card mechanics to either shoot or sort of use them to do a new platforming technique was amazing. It's so quick. I love the speedrunning aspect to it. Like, this was also a game I had so much trouble putting down. It's got kind of like a couple other games. It's got the Riz, Matt. It
has Riz, and I do need to go back and say Hades has infinite Riz also.
Infinite. Yes, indeed. But yeah, Neon White's my number 4. Was like my surprise game of the year that year. It made Ragnarok my number 2. But yeah, that's my number 4. I can't believe we're at yours, Matt. I've now got a guess of what I think your top 4 are, and I'll let you know after you say them if I was right.
Okay.
No order. I think I know the 4 games.
Okay. My number 4 from the year 2022, Elden Ring.
Ooh, and you're about to eat again.
I'm about to eat again because the DLC is coming out. I don't think I've ever paid $40 for DLC before, but based on the trailer alone, it looks like it might be worth the money. It's like there's a lot of stuff in it.
Yes.
Seems like a complete separate game, kind of. But I loved Elden Ring. I got in there a little while ago when I heard that the DLC was coming out, and it comes out in June. And was getting my shit wrecked by easy guys, and because I haven't played it in so long, so I got to get back in there once I'm done with Rebirth. And
this was your first FromSoft game, wasn't it?
My first FromSoft game, and
wow,
I don't ever do this, but I was like trying to beat it so bad, and I remember getting up out of bed on a Saturday morning at like 7:30 in the morning and just like letting my sweetie still sleep. And I was like, I'm just gonna get up and like she'll just when she wakes up, I'll probably still be doing this.
Yes.
I beat the game and I like screamed. I like was like, yes! Like going nuts, and she got up and was like, what's going on? I was like, I just beat Elden Ring. And then she like took my picture in front of the TV.
I remember this post from her.
So it was like I felt like $1,000,000. It was so great. And then I just got to and then act like I was normal after that. But Elden Ring was just an all-timer, and is just a great game. I know a lot of FromSoft people who do love the game say it is one of the easier ones.
Sure.
But I don't see how that's true, because it is the hardest game. It's the hardest game on my list.
Yeah. Gosh, just brutal.
Yeah.
This game made such waves that year. And it's amazing, even just going down this list, I'm like, I don't know, like, are there better games than what's come out in the last, like, 5 years?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's your number 4, Matt. Elden Ring. My number 3, a game that I wonder if it's on your list. We'll see. Alan Wake 2.
It's my number 2, dog. Oh! My number 2.
Dude, I mean, you and I just did a podcast about this in January with the great Haley McLean.
That's right.
That was such a fun co-op episode. This one's actually available on YouTube, even if you're not a Patreon subscriber. We just talked about it a bunch, but dude, I'm still like blown away at how much I loved it and how creative I thought that game was.
I've been listening to a podcast all about, well, it's not all about Alan Wake, but I found this show on YouTube that I realized is I could listen to it as a podcast.
Ooh.
And it's called The Lady of Lore. And it's this woman who unpacks all the lore from a bunch of different video games, but I've been particularly invested in her work on the Alan Wake Control, like Remedy stuff, and I love it. And there's a new episode in my feed that I haven't listened to yet that I'm very excited to listen to. Honestly, probably after this.
Ooh, dude.
But I love that because I just love hearing the story.
Yes,
the story is so good, and I loved playing it, and it was scary, and I just really, really loved it. So I'll take all that you can give me. I've been thinking about starting Twin Peaks again for the 4th time, but I have never seen it. I've never finished it. I tried to watch it and I didn't get it. I think I get it now.
Yes,
I think I'm ready. But I just need all of that. I just need all of that type of thing.
Truly. What a triumph from Sam Lake and the team at Remedy. I mean,
yeah.
And I want to check out this lore series as well, because this is one of those games where there's so much going on and there's so much that you might know or not know that it, like, you can, I was just like, I guess taking the game at its word, and I was like, I think this is all amazing, but when people break down the lore of it, it feels like it's even better than what I knew. So gosh, my number 3, your number 2. Well, what's your number 3 then?
My number 3, my dog, Disco Elysium from 2019.
Didn't think about this one for you. Oh my gosh.
This game is the game I recommend people almost the most. I think Inside is a game that I tell everybody to play.
Yes.
And then Disco Elysium if I have a sense that you might like that. I told our mutual friend Colin McGurk about it.
That's right.
He said it was the first after he texted me when he finished it, and he said that is the first video game I've finished in 20 years. Like he could not get enough of it. It is if you have a particular mind, it really scratches an itch for you. Yeah. And it is so great. It is just an unbelievable game. I wish everybody would play it so I could, I guess, start a church about it. It's so good. It is so great. I really love it.
It's one of those rainy day ones. I was looking at my Steam library last night, and I got it in a bundle at the end of last year, and it's not time now, but there's going to be a time, and I can't wait to tell you about when I actually play it.
You got to get in there.
Matt, you gave us your number 2. Well,
That's
my number
right.
3 I gave, which is your number 2, but my number 2, which is the last new game I have to say, because my number 1 is Tears of the Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
My number 2 is Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Let's go, dog.
A game that I played as soon as it came out. I was off the heels of my deepest playthrough of Final Fantasy VII Original at the time, where I had gotten to the end of Disc 1, where probably the most famous moment from the game happens, and Remake, I just gobbled it up at the time, and I've been replaying it in anticipation of Rebirth, and I played halfway through that game again, and there are definitely some little things about it that it's like small gripes that I absolutely have with it. Kind of like I'm going to have with Rebirth, I think, but in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I was between the cast, the combat, the music, the world, the story, there's so much about it that I just am amazed by, and I continue to be amazed by, and I'm wondering if Rebirth is going to be able to top it for me because it sits so high. It's going to be a challenge because there's totally different games, I feel like, in some ways.
Really different, but I mean, expansive in I don't know. It iterates on Rebirth iterates on Remake in a way that I think is good. I don't know. The gameplay still feels really good. It looks great, but the open world aspect of it, I think, is fresh and fun. And because you need to open up the world to get to these other places that aren't Midgar. So I'm excited to try all that. I'm sure it's going to have the trappings of what makes open world games kind of not fun at times. Sure. But hey, as long as there's more Queen's Blood, I'm ready to go. I'm fine playing some Queen's Blood every now and then. That's good shit.
It really is. But yeah, Remake for me is my number 2. We've listed my number 1, which is Tears of the Kingdom, and we have one more game for you to list. Your number 1 game of the last, 4.5-5 years.
I mean, it's Baldur's Gate 3. It's Baldur's Gate 3 with a bullet. It is that game. It could be the best game I've ever played. It could be my favorite game.
Yes.
It's so much. There's so much in there. It took me months with taking time off of it to finish it.
Yeah.
I put about 100-something hours in that thing.
Goodness.
And I will do it again. I will. It's not like any of these other games where I've said I don't really replay games.
Yeah.
I will play through Baldur's Gate 3 again.
Totally.
And then I'll probably play through it again. It's just that game, because of the variety of experiences that you can have and just how fun it is and how easy it is to put down, actually. Whereas, you put down Elden Ring, you put down Deathloop for a little bit of time, you're kind of screwed coming back in because you don't remember how to play. Baldur's Gate 3, you can put down, you might not remember what the story is, but you can investigate enough to remember what the story is. And the gameplay is all on like a wheel. Like in the combat, so you don't have to remember like what trigger does what for combat and stuff like that. You just sort of remember like, okay, what do I have in my wheel? I got it, and then you're back in it. Like you're back in it in like 5 minutes. It's great. It's funny. It's sad. I like cried playing it.
Yeah.
Not out of frustration, but out of like an emotional beat from the story. I was like, this is just unbelievable. So that is my number one with a bullet,
dude.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Do you mind if we go and list our 10 to 1 before we sign out?
I was really hoping that we would do that, yes.
Well, why don't you go ahead and lead off for us?
Okay, I did revise my honorable mentions because you've already mentioned 2 of them, so I felt like since they were mentioned, that I can add 2 different ones that I forgot to add.
Certainly.
Okay, these are in no particular order. Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Just a great video game. Just
so
perfect.
Good.
It made me really love Kirby. I'd play a Kirby and the Forgotten Land style game with Kirby once a year if I could. If they would just let me. Star Wars, Jedi Fallen Order, and Survivor. That's one. Because those are some of the best Star Wars stories we've got. I think they're just great. They really understand Star Wars in a way that I feel like some of the stuff that I've seen doesn't really get it. Just really, really great stuff. Final Fantasy 16, just a banger. Love it. Finished it. I feel like I'm the only person in my friend group that played this game and liked it. I really loved it. Now, this next one, Control. I was late to it. Control 2019 is a game everybody should play. It is a perfect superhero game. There's a great power fantasy that you can act out in that game. It's just incredible. Vampire Survivors is a near perfect video game. It is almost as perfect of a video game as Tetris. It is so fucking good. Ghost of Tsushima, just that exact type of thing we were talking about earlier, where there's it's a well-designed open world. It is so great and so fun. The vibes are immaculate. It rocks. It is so good.
Yes.
I feel like I'll be the only person that puts this on their list ever, probably. Pokemon Legends Arceus.
It's on my honorable mentions.
Okay, it rocks. It's so
good.
So great.
Yeah.
I'm excited that we're getting another Legends entry in the next year.
Yes.
I'm really excited about that. Hitman 3.
Oh my
Hitman
goodness.
3 fucking owns. It is so good. It is. I played through all 3 of those new Hitman games. Now they're bundled as one thing, which is really cool. But Hitman 3 rocks. Check it out. Check out all those Hitman games. They are incredible. They're so fun and so cool, and you can literally do whatever you want in those games.
Yeah.
It is a complete sandbox. Go nuts in there. The fact that this is in honorable mentions and not in the top 10 is heartbreaking to me. The Last of Us Part 2.
Is that the one you forgot?
Yes. The Last of Us Part 2.
I thought it was going to be your number 1.
I loved that game enough for it to be my number 1.
Yeah.
But you saw what I was working with in the top 10. I could make an argument to slot out some of these other ones, but I felt like representative of the time on the show.
Yes.
Or, with the time span, the time that has spanned the existence of the show.
Yes.
I had to put it in there. But Last of Us Part 2 is an incredible piece of work. And then my last honorable mention, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh my goodness.
I loved Guardians of the Galaxy. I was sort of hesitant because, the Marvel's Avengers game was bad.
Mm-hmm.
But this game, I wish we could get more.
Dude.
I want more of this because the cast was great. They made their own thing with the Guardians, who are already who were not super famous characters really before, but are defined by the characters in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
But this cast did their own take on these characters, and they're so fun and so great, and I loved it. And it was unbelievable. I loved that game so much. I highly recommend it.
Ugh, what a list of honorable mentions. You truly named almost all of mine.
Hell yes.
So I'm not even going to list any, but would you go down your list from just 10 to 1 and recap your top 10?
Okay, yes. Here we go. I got number 10, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Cyberpunk 2077, God of War Ragnarok, Death Stranding, Tears of the Kingdom, Hades, Elden Ring, Disco Elysium, Alan Wake 2, and Baldur's Gate 3.
Just the heaviest of hitters. And my top 10 of the past 4.5 years since the podcast inception are number 10, Cocoon, number 9, Super Mega Baseball 3, number 8, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 Remake, number 7, Return to Monkey Island, number 6, Deathloop, number 5, Metroid Dread, number 4, Neon White, number 3, Alan Wake 2, number 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and number 1, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Matthew, we have done it.
We've done it, and these are all bangers, and I could have done this for 4 hours.
Truly. Dude, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I'm so glad you could be here for episode 200. I'm not able to have, all of the people on that I would like who have been meaningful to this show in some ways, but you are one of those people, so I'm glad we can make this work. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me. It's so cool to see what you're doing with this, what you guys are doing with the network and stuff, and it's really, really great, and I'm really happy to be here for the 200th. Really, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. That's very kind. On your way out, though, what do you want to plug? Where can people find you, Matt?
You can check out well, I'm not really on social media, but I am on some places as Matt Apodaca. You could just kind of figure it out.
You got to earn it. Find me.
Find me. If hopefully it's me, but it's, I'm on some of those. I go see Dune 2. I'm not in it. I just think it rips. I think it's just really tight. And then you can check out Get Played over at HeadGum and on Patreon, patreon.com/getplayed, where we also do Get Animated, and where we talk about anime and stuff. And but check out everything that Connor's doing over here and what they're doing at Super NPC Radio.
Matthew, thank you. And check out Get Played. It's just such a good show. It's one of the highlights of my Monday is that's usually the first thing I'm listening to.
You were like Garfield before.
And then the show changed me.
Then you listen to the show and you're like, I'm like Garfield.
I will actually be doing a podcast highlight on a different segment of this episode 200. So stay tuned. Or if I've already done it in part 1, then this has been listed. But Matt, I guess without further ado, I guess we'll move on to part 3, and I'll see you another time.
I'll see you soon, buddy.
Welcome back to the Call Me By Your Game 200th episode special. I, your host, Connor McCabe, return for part 3, the finale of this little roundup that we're doing here. And I'm not alone. I got another buddy. Welcome to the microphone, editor, producer, and composer of the show's theme song, Mr. Jeremy Schmidt. Oh, and composer of little ditties, it seems.
Compose on the fly. I'm always composing.
You're always riffing. You're always ready to go.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about an artist, by the way.
It is, and thanks for calling me that.
You're welcome.
That is how I prefer to be referred to as an artist. Some people are like, hilarious. Like, that's close. Some people are like,
very close.
Such a talented writer. I'm like, close. Getting warmer, but artist, that does the trick. Thanks for having me, Connor.
You're welcome. It just covers all that you do. Jeremy, had to have you on this episode. You are, and just such an integral piece to this podcast. But I thought it'd be fun to have you on because this part of the episode, but part 3, we're going to be talking about the show's history, its inception, the bumpy road along the way, and then a little bit of what guests might be able, or listeners rather, might be able to expect to hear in the future from the show. But before we get into it, pal, how are you doing today? What's going on for you?
Well, full disclosure, a little peek behind the curtain. We're doing this on a work day, and work is the work started coming and it don't stop coming, as All-Star Smash Mouth might say.
And Smash Mouth might say that.
As All Stars Smash Mouth.
So yeah, of course. So one of those type of Mondays already, huh, pal?
Yeah, it's a shitty Monday, but I have been squeezing in because it's a work from home week. So anytime I, have a break from my calls or my emails, I'll devote my attention totally to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I mean,
to the Golden Saucer.
To the Golden Saucer, my boy. I actually just ran around the Golden Saucer.
Really?
That's where I was. That's exactly where I was. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Now, Jeremy, I'm behind you, but I have gotten to finally this last week. I really got to put in some time. I'm about 14 hours in. Just poked my head out into the Junon area.
Yeah.
And lit up a tower and. Dude, it's great.
Lit up a bit of a stogue, I hope.
A big old fatty. It takes all 5 of your fingers to wrap around that puppy.
Yeah, 2 Red 13 paws around that stove.
Yes. Well, I'd like to know, if I'm not too concerned about spoilers for how you felt about running around the Gold Saucer, but part of the fun for this, Rebirth is like a remake, was seeing sections of this game we've seen a million times on the PS1. Seeing it fully realized in the way that the team's hoping us to, what were you like, wow, this is pretty cool running around it? Or you're like, I don't know.
No, I've never once have I just been sort of beige about the game.
Sure.
I've always been fire red the whole time. Red's good.
Yeah, okay, phew.
Yeah, I love it. I love every part of it. All of the, every section of the game, I think, is a slam dunk. There are parts of the original game that I don't even really care for that I like now. Like Junon is a good example of a place that I'm just like, that was fine in the original. I didn't really like having to march around and do all that stupid stuff. But then I'm playing it now and I'm like, wow, they really made this fun. They made a lot of the mini games fun in the Golden. I mean, everything's good. Yeah. All the liberties they're taking are great. With Remake, I replayed it and found some more nitpicky things that I didn't like. So I imagine that'll be the same way here if I was to replay Rebirth.
Totally.
But it might be a long while before I replay this game just because it is pretty intense the way I'm going through it.
Yeah, and it's, Remake itself was a long game. I mean, I put 45 hours into my first playthrough, which is quite thorough. Yeah. And this thing is double that, so I've heard.
Yes. I think it is exactly double that. I'm about that many hours in now.
Oh boy. I am so jealous of you.
The last time I checked it was 36 and then I played a whole bunch more. But then, but I feel like I'm maybe halfway through the game.
Okay.
I don't know. It's hard to say. I know what is coming, but they could also cut down sections, make them shorter. I don't know how it's going to go, but loving it.
Dang.
Can't get enough of it, just and I'm really just eating its lunch too. I'm putting a lot of work in there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Doing a lot of time. So
yeah, you're bullying the game. You're eating its lunch.
I'm eating its
giving
lunch.
It a swirly.
Yes.
This is, it's fun that we get to chat about this right now because the last episode I even released on this feed was a re-release of your episode 18 when you were first a guest on the podcast, discussing the original game. So it was fun to go back and listen to a decent amount of that episode and hear us, talk about the looming release of Remake in general back in 2020.
Yeah, we were pre-pandemic babies back then.
Truly weeks before that would hit. But Jeremy, I want to go back, just take a little trip down memory lane here.
Take a little trip.
And we won't be finishing the song, just for copyright purposes.
Yeah, you don't get flagged. Because
that'll get flagged, because we sing it so well that it will get flagged. Jeremy, the reason I started even hosting my podcast had a lot to do with me guesting on your show in the first place, Video Games, a Comedy Show. And we've talked about this on different pods. I think even maybe episode 100 when you hosted me on this show, talking about 3D Movie Maker. You remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We've talked about this a bunch, but, this show doesn't happen without Video Games, a Comedy Show. And I don't even remember how you came to ask me. Like, were we seeing each other around more? Like, was it a shot in the dark? Were you trying to embarrass me?
I was trying to humiliate you. I thought if I could just get him on this podcast, I could really do a number on him. We were both cast in a short film, and then I'll never forget, when that fateful day, I happened to be walking, and you stepped out of your car, and you were holding, I believe it was, a doorstop 2DS.
It checks out.
And you were playing... I wish I could remember the game.
What would I have been playing?
It might have been a Pokemon. It also might have been Link Between Worlds or something.
Yeah,
it was
something like that.
And you were like, dude, I just got this, and I'm like loving this game or something. And that stuck with me. And then I thought, later on, you would have been somebody that I wouldn't have felt nervous asking to be like on the show if you played video games. And I think that was all the proof I needed.
I think so it's as if I planted the seed in you.
Yeah, and then later I would come and ask you to do it. I wish I could remember.
I feel like we probably ran into each other I want to say we ran into each other at like the Inner Sanctum or something.
I mean, and maybe like we were doing that quite a bit too. Like maybe we were doing sketches quite a bit together. And I remember, I think there was definitely a handful of like Not Too Shabby, which is like a open mic sketch show that they do at UCB, something like that. But yeah, I mean, that was also like such a long time ago. Like we were definitely friends, but not like today, which
totally.
is a
now
whole
we've
different
just
thing.
forced ourselves into each other's lives and become business partners, so to speak.
Totally.
But I remember getting asked because you started your show, sometime in the middle part, I want to say ish of 2018.
Yeah, God.
Video Games, a Comedy Show, and we've talked about it before. But I think my first episode ever was on Silent Hill 2 during one of your themed Halloween months. And I did so much research for that episode.
That's so sick.
Or maybe it's the original Silent Hill. I did so much research. I was like watching YouTube videos on my laptop. Like, who knew? And like this would only be just the writing on the wall for the future to come for me. Of spending too much time thinking about games.
Dude, yeah. So it must have been not too long after the show started. Like maybe just 6 episodes in 8. Is it?
That sounds right. Like around 8 or so. But yeah, I mean, so, I've talked about this before as well, but going on your show, I mean, I had so much fun doing it that like my brain started to spin creatively. Some might say for the first time, but I started to just like get ideas for your show and then for other things that we could do. Like I think the first pitch I ever brought you was probably the Space Solace pitch, I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah, quite possibly. And I remember like the name Space Solace. Yeah. Like I remember thinking like, what does that mean? Solace?
Yeah, it really doesn't tell you anything about it. It doesn't. It would have been smart because I've seen other podcasts do this since we did it. Like I doubt we were the first, but I like to believe that maybe we were some of the first to do a podcast, a console fantasy draft. That would have been a better way to pitch it, I think.
So, but then it kind of set up this whole narrative continuity of us going to space several times and losing so many of the world's only living libraries of different consoles.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a slam dunk pitch, and we got one on that show coming up soon. Like
I can't wait.
here in March. It's been so fun doing those episodes, but then also just I see you're a frequent guest on Video Games, a Comedy Show. A little less over the last few years, but mostly because we do so much on the Patreon and beyond.
Yeah, it's true. But through all of that, I just like kept. I think that was we had pitched like Video Games, a serious show as well, because I had like played through Earthbound, and I was like, how we should do a series like this as well. I remember. Do you remember being at your old apartment? I think it was you, me, and McCaller were just like talking around your table about what this could look like.
Yeah.
Back
at the Mikey apartment, which I think he still lives at. I think he's still over there.
I think so. He might be moving soon, though.
Okay.
So that really puts like a timestamp on the episode. It marks the end of an era.
Definitely end of an era. I mean, that's a huge. That is such a huge thing for him to move there because he's been there for freaking so long.
For 6 years at least.
Yeah. I've moved twice.
Yeah. So, I was just like, I knew I wanted to do my own podcast at some point, but I didn't know what exactly that looked like. Until, spending some time with people who aren't gamers, but then still had fond memories of a specific game and could recall back to very specific points in their childhood. It wasn't until I was like, wait a second, this is a show I want to do. Like, I don't have to do that much work. I just got to get people to talk to me, and it could be a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think your idea to do a show like this, there was a time. What you're saying kind of brings me back to a time when, like, I would scour the podcasts on Apple Podcasts looking for video game shows.
Yeah.
And specifically ones that weren't necessarily run by like a video game journalistic outlet, but like ones that were more, I don't know, that had something more to offer. And I remember I listened to this one show a very long time ago, and it was like an episode about a guy kind of talking about, like, telling a story about his life, but like he connected it to a video game that he used to play, and it was sort of like, it was almost as if like a prestige, like Radio Lab or This American Life was doing a video game episode or something. And then, like I didn't see, other than that one thing, which I thought was like, that seems like a pretty good idea. I had not heard any other shows like it, really. Yeah. Like the one that you wanted to do. And I thought, well, what, appealed to me about it was that it could have some sort of elevated discussion about a game that isn't just the thing that you hear all the time, which is like, especially today, which is just like, how is it mechanically? Do you enjoy playing it? But it was like, no, this is more about like how you feel about the game from a nostalgic point of like lens, from a childhood lens. Did it get you through a particular bad time in your life? Did it cause a particularly bad time in your life?
Totally.
And so that I always thought was like something that was just missing. It's just not non-existent. And I really don't, I guess, but I don't scour as much as I used to scour. Yeah. But I don't know of any other shows really like that. So
I haven't found anything either that is quite like it. And I think this was not intentional at the time, but I'm really glad that we ended up sort of landing on something that was unique, kind of like what you're saying, but also was something that kind of played into my skill set as opposed to just trying to do another show that was just talking about games. Because I'll listen to crap like that. I'll listen to people just talk about games because I like that going through my ears to my brain. But it is always fun when there is a unique spin on it, or someone brings like themselves, like you bringing, like comedy to video games on your podcast. It's not like there aren't other funny video game podcasts out there.
There's even one that's kind of funny.
I've heard of this. But you did sort of the same thing of like bringing a sort of tongue-in-cheek-esque view or like approach to your podcast, which it's, we've done so many different things with your show over the years.
It's an amorphous. It should be. If it's at its best when it's like a parody of a video game podcast, and it's most oftentimes though just people deeply nerding out on stuff that they like.
Yes, we'll occasionally do more unique stuff, but I would tune in even if it was just that other, just the discussions.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking back, I'm really grateful that happened. And in fact, because I've been re-releasing some classic episodes in recent memory, like, I don't know if you have, like, listened to those old Call Me By Your Game episodes, but I have, like, such a nervous energy as a host. Like, I listen to even the top of yours, which is already 18 of those in.
Yeah.
And I start the episode like this. I mean, all people have to do is go listen to the previous one on their feed.
Yeah.
But it goes a lot like this. It's like, welcome back to the Call Me By Your Game podcast. I'm your host, Connor McCabe. And just, it's that fast. It's that nervous.
Yeah, right.
It's not bad. And when I settle in to just like actually connecting with the person I'm with, it's good. But you can definitely tell that I have 200 or so of these under my belt at this point.
Yeah, dude. It's funny because, like, I wanted to do podcasts originally because I was like, oh, I know exactly how I want to do it. Like, I know exactly how I want to host. And it's like basically playing a character. Like, I just was like, it's such a slight deviation from how I would be at like a party, but it is slightly more heightened and in a direction. And I had that so mapped out from the jump. Not to say that I didn't grow as a host too over time, but I just remember thinking like, no, I know exactly the voice I want to have, exactly the tone of it. How long do you think it took for you to find like sort of the right energy? Because I would never say that your hosting was ever bad, but maybe what it is like you were like dialing in the energy of like what the show was.
I think you're totally right. I think that, and I would agree it wasn't bad. I remember people, and it could just be people only telling you the nice things, but people enjoying it from the jump. But I want to say probably sometime close to a year doing it. Especially because we did maybe 18 or 19 episodes in person. Like, I keep forgetting this, that we like would record these out of your house in your podcast room.
My little studio, my laundry room studio,
Yes, I do, even though, like, sometimes getting packed in there with four of us was a lot, but, like, I do have nostalgia for that little nook. I don't know about you.
Oh, dude, I do too, yeah. I mean, I met a lot of great folks in that nook. I met Nick. Remember Nick?
Yes! Nick Limone. Oh my gosh.
Not Costanza. I met him also later. But Nick Limone, and you would bring people by, and it was always really fun. Oscar. I remember you playing a game with Oscar, Annabelle Seymour.
Oh my gosh. You got you did a lot of work for that too. You would like make sure that whatever game we were talking about was ready to play. You would set up the little, because we would also, in addition to recording these in person, most of them are still on YouTube. I mean, I haven't taken any down. I just never posted like 2 of them.
Right.
Are these old like 30-minute gameplay videos of my guest and I sort of warming up by them playing the game. But I think it was, after I had some time during the pandemic to record remotely and get dialed in there, was probably when I finally was like had found that sort of spot. And there's times where I still, like, as a host, I'll like look back after a recording and wonder, like, was that any good? Was I paying attention? Was I asking insightful questions? Like, and not to ask just clever questions for clever sake, but like, am I actually feeding off what this person is bringing to this episode?
Yeah, I had a question about that, which I thought was so, to me, is kind of fascinating, is the paying attention thing. That's actually a bigger deal than I think people can sometimes give it credit for, especially if you're struggling with a little something called ADHD, like moi here. How do you stay engaged? Like, I have to go nuts on a show to stay engaged. You probably hear a lot of, I don't want to say the same stories, but it's some variation of, I played this as a kid and I liked it as a kid. How do you stay in it?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have like a particular formula, but I definitely think, becoming more comfortable has played a huge part in that. So I'm less distracted by things that are in my brain or how the guest might be feeling. I guess I just try to focus on, like, truly focus on what they're saying and less so on, like, what I'm going to ask next. Even if it makes me think of something that I want to know about, I'll just try my best to, which I realize that, like, asking how to stay focused, the answer of someone telling you to stay engaged isn't the most helpful thing. But that's truly all I really try to do. And it helps, you know, having hosted so many of these episodes that there are a lot of common themes that come up or common roads that we go down. You know, if I'm talking to someone who isn't much of a gamer but has a small history with games, I know that, like, maybe I'm not going to ask them, like, what their favorite console of all time is because they don't have one.
Right.
But maybe I'll ask them something else, like, that might be a little unorthodox. So, yeah, it's tough. But, yeah, so anyway, I think all that being said is that, yeah, probably became comfortable about a year in, like, fully locked in. But I still feel that growth all the time. In fact, we've had some minor show changes throughout its history. The fun facts and the recommendations have been there since the beginning. So basically, the show's structure has really not changed at all.
Yeah.
Truly. So that's helpful. But you know, we also started doing. Once you and I started the Patreon, we started doing a bonus episode of this podcast every month, the co-op series, which now, Jeremy, I think this month when Half-Life 2 comes out on the Patreon for our engineer toads, that's going to be episode 45 of the co-op series.
45 months. Wow.
Just nuts and, like,
unreal.
Yeah, I know. I found a way to sort of. Part of what doesn't make it insurmountable for playing a game basically every month and hosting an episode on it, part of what makes it doable is that I will often build it into, which probably comes without saying, build it into what I'm already planning to play.
Yeah, which is definitely smart and definitely a way to sort of min-max your own efforts, like with games that you want to be playing. But I mean, that's still an older game on top of anything new you're playing and anything you're playing for the Games Club.
That's true. You know, I think just to that point, too, I've been very lucky to have had, especially the last year and a half, a very flexible schedule to have the time to do all of this extra stuff and stay on top of it, because it is a lot. Even just playing, I mean, Mass Effect, which we just wrapped up recording our Games Club series for, that ended up not being as meaty as I thought, but I was not upset. I think it was any more meatier, and it might have been challenging for a Games Club series.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was a breeze. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say compared to Pokemon, which is probably the meatiest of the games that we played, it was a bit of a breeze.
Big time.
And so, we love it. We love that in a Games Club pick. And I feel like we have that with our
I think so.
next one, not to timestamp it too much, but BioShock is such a streamlined experience. So
very nice. It helps to have something like that. But yeah, you know, it's definitely work, and I have to stay on top of it, but it also helps me stay on top of games, because I'm like, I have to host a chat on this, and if I don't, like, have quite a thorough experience, then it's going to be challenging to host those shows. And those are different, you know, from these regular episodes where I'm focused on the guest and their experience and the time in their life. I do find, kind of like our Games Club series, the analysis portion of it can be challenging. Do you do anything, you know, when we're doing episodes like that, whether it's a Games Club or an overview episode, to prepare to chat about it, or do you just kind of show up and whatever comes up top of mind you'll discuss?
For Sonic I didn't, but that was all top of mind.
That's
stuff.
called self-care.
That's called self-care. But like for Mario 64, I did a ton of like note taking and digging around in it, and had a total blast doing it. And I think just by the time we did Sonic, we were 3 in, and I was sort of at some point there's like a fatigue that might set in, and maybe it interrupts your typical workflow. But I would say for most of them, I'm taking some kind of notes, or I'm at least like jotting down like, okay, like, because we're doing a panel show. That's another thing too, is if I was hosting, like, let's say a show with one other person, it would be a little different. It would be more like those old Super NPCs episodes we did that were just like so intensive.
Yes.
But because we're a panel show, I can't, I usually jot down like 4 things I want to like bring up in that episode. Like 4 things that I think are either funny or I liked and then because the other people have stuff they want to say too.
Yeah.
So, you don't, in hour and a half or however long those episodes are, you don't want to like, I want to have like so many notes and take all those notes and then not really get to talk about it, because there's not really a point there. But I do think it really is helpful for anybody doing those shows, by the way. Just 5.
Yeah.
These are 5 things.
There we go, baby. Yeah, I started, like, it's been so helpful to me, and this I've mostly been doing for the Games Club, not so much the co-op series, but I have like a notepad that I'll just kind of have out on my little table where, like, that's next to my beverages. And it's helped me, like, actually articulate my thoughts better and have something original to say that I'm not regurgitating from a video or another podcast,
Absolutely.
Like, I've actually tried more lately before I do an episode. Like, when I hosted the Remake Intergrade DLC podcast, which we just did, I didn't watch anything on it or listen to anything because I didn't want to get someone's thought in my brain and not be able to get it out. I
do regurgitate all the time. Robin Williams style, baby. Just ripping people's ideas clean off. And it's like, there is a part of that's a little bit like not that, it's like, who gives a shit? But then also, it is like, well, how do I feel about it, or what is like a more pure opinion that I could have about this? I think it's really smart.
Totally.
Yeah. People be talking about games very smartly on the internet, and it makes you want to talk about them smartly too. I feel like that's another kind of recent thing too. It's just like, I feel like the vernacular around talking about games, like the amount of times we use the words like mechanics, or like what's the hacky ones, visceral, or
immersion,
immersive, biome. All these like words to describe all these things. Very, the discussion around games just in general is elevated to such a higher collegiate level now.
There's just so much good stuff out there. It's great, but I've been challenging myself just slightly more to like have those more original thoughts, and if I do hear something that I'm like in agreement with, I'll try to state that like it's not my original thought. It's not a huge deal, but I try to give credit where credit's due, because I wouldn't have thought of it without it. But yeah, I love the co-op series. Just to get us back to that, it's really fun. It's also a chance for me to like sort of get my own round table of people together. Because this not being normally a round table show, I get to look forward to that every month of having a different crew on discussing a game. Sometimes it's brand new to people. Sometimes that is like for Half-Life 2, that for that instance, Hearn and Kristen have both played this game several times.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's new to me and Garrett, so it should be fun. We've talked about the Patreon a little bit too, but I think people know. I try not to harp on it too much on the podcast, but it's where all of our bonus podcasts live that Jeremy and I have been creating over the past it'll be 4 years this summer. So I'll plug it at the end, but if you're looking for bonus podcasts from us, all sorts of stuff, Games Club series, Mikey's new Rumors podcast, the co-op episodes, there's a bunch of tiers on there, so you can find one that's right for you. There's a link in the show notes. sort of getting into Patreon stuff as well before we maybe clear this part of the episode off, is that we've been doing it for almost 4 years. We did a whole episode as well on Super NPCs for our patrons, talking about the time we did that show and the Patreon. But we've had way more changes to the Patreon over the 4 years than we have had to our shows, and I feel like we're finding a nice groove there. What do you have any thoughts about that? Like the state we're in currently on the Patreon. We're about a quarter in now too of our new changes this year.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think that the Patreon as it exists today is like way more of a
Sustainable?
it's definitely sustainable to do, but also it's way more of a sleek package, I think, for somebody who wants to go and sign up. Basically, we've distilled everything down to what it seems like people really kind of maybe want the most, or what we want to do the most, which is, we have a weekly show there, a games club, which is at $5. It's basically a, hey, thanks for what you do, and we'll take this show on the side. And then we have a few additional bonus episodes that are at a slightly higher tier. And then the rest is hey, do you want to collab with us? Do you want to do something? You know what I mean? Do you want to pick a topic for us to cover or something like that? I mean, I think there's a higher tier, right? That's just
that I'm sure no one will ever subscribe at, but
totally, but it's there if you want it. We have a $1 tip jar too. I mean, yeah, now we're in a manageable place, and the shows that are on there seem to be things that people really want to contribute to the show.
Totally. Yeah, that's definitely a challenge for us. Was it's tough to have something like that that's sustainable. We are already doing all of our weekly free feed podcasts, but to add bonus content on top of that, it's a job. But yeah, I totally agree. I think we have a much cleaner package now of this bonus stuff that you get. Despite we reach out to every patron who subscribes and ask them how they found us, why they subbed at the tier that they did, and what they're looking for us to do in the future. And it was funny when we were ending Super NPCs at the end of the year, to have so many people. I just think I didn't realize how many people enjoyed it, because we don't always hear from everyone on the Patreon. But it was great to hear everyone's love for that series. And but I think now, yes, we have sort of distilled it down to what's both manageable for us, but also the patrons are still going to get enjoyment out of.
Yeah. I mean, and hopefully that is the case. I mean, the one of the reasons too, and with the Super NPCs, wanting to maybe take a little bit of a step back, is that it was kind of eating the real estate of things that we would do on Video Games, a Comedy Show, or on Bonk Boys Once Upon a Time and stuff. so it was just a lot more content for sure, but at the same time too, it's we wanted to, I think, funnel our energy into something that was just different. So there were different offerings across the board. And for all those people who really like Super NPCs out there, go to hell.
You can never listen to again.
I love you.
We wiped it from the Patreon.
I miss it too. Honestly, there are days when I'm like, oh, I could record one this week. I don't got a lot going on. It's rare.
True. Yeah. It just when one of us has a little topic that would fit our little 50-minute episodes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's still on there for. I mean, if anybody signs up at any tier, that back catalog of 180 episodes is there. But yeah. The Patreon, at least for this year, we're in a pretty good spot. You know what to expect from us, and I'll be pumped to get into BioShock pretty dang soon. I've got some. I don't need to talk about it here, but some admin to do of scheduling for us. But dude, would you kindly, Jeremy? We're gonna be there pretty soon.
It's gonna be fun. I cannot wait. Actually, I haven't revisited it since the first time I played it. So
oh boy,
be great.
That's awesome. Lastly, for this segment, I'm just going to like briefly touch on stuff for the show's future. We have been, periodically, just about once a month, maybe a little less, releasing old co-op episodes. So those bonus episodes that live on our Patreon for the $10 tier, those have started to come out, the legacy ones, for free. So I believe the last one I did was the Shadow of the Colossus episode. The NFL Blitz one should be coming soon. That's a small change that we've had recently of getting those out on the free feed. But most importantly, Jeremy, I've been teasing this, I think, since like the first few episodes of the show, but we're finally going to bring back guests to have their additional solo episodes for returning guests.
Fun.
Yes. So,
we've run out of friends.
I have no one else I'll ever talk to about games except these 200 people. But I think, especially with the gamers like you and I, or people who've been through deep phases in their lives, I've had so many people say, well, hey, if you ever want to have me back, I could talk about this game or this one. And yeah, we're finally going to do it. I'll be curious to see if, how the show feels or if anything changes there. But after over 4 years at this point, I was like, you know what? I think it's time to have Mikey Stevens back on the regular feed and so on.
I think that's a great idea, and that's gonna be a lot of fun for people who've listened to the show for a long time. But the discoverability of the show. I mean, the show's only grown since then. So to try to capture some of that magic in the moment with some of those older guests who are still doing great work out there and whose lives have grown and whose families have grown in some cases.
Dang,
that's gonna be great. That's gonna be great to catch up with all those folks. Not that you don't maybe talk to them outside the show, but it'll be cool to see. Yeah, it'll be cool to get them on mic again. And I think there were a lot of surprise gets on that.
Big time.
On your original 200 run, surprise guests where we maybe we weren't sure how it was going to go, and it went really, really well. So it'd be cool to see some of those people return.
Yeah, that would be fun. It'll be great to get some old friends back on the show. But yeah, as far as what's coming in the future, like, you can expect, honestly, a lot of the same. We've been doing more really outside of the show, both on YouTube and TikTok. We've got highlights that we post every week from the show. If you want to watch this podcast in video format, all current episodes as of like last October we put on the YouTube. So check out that link. But Jeremy, before we scoot and plug our little buttocks off, any last words for you, or anything that you want to leave people with as we close out episode 200 of Call Me By Your Game?
Here's to 200 more.
Now we're talking, baby. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining. Truly, this show wouldn't be what it is without you, dude. You put so much effort into it for me every week. And you do it for me, nobody else. What do you want to plug on your way out, buddy? Where should people find you?
Well, we plugged so much on this episode, Obviously, the Patreon is a great place to go and sign up and check out what we're doing. My show, Video Games, a Comedy Show. The Discord, if you haven't jumped on there, Discord's a great place to, ping somebody or check in on how a game's doing and how everyone's liking it, to just chat. If you feel, I notice like a lot of people feel like they maybe don't have a great community to chat about games with. This is a great place to go and do that. But yeah, that's it.
I love it. Well, thanks again, pal. I'll go ahead and just close this out with some plugs of my own. The show art, something I forgot to even mention earlier, is done by Glenn J., a wonderful artist who found me on Twitch back in the day and unsolicited sent me a beautiful rendition of my crappy cover art that I made. He made something absolutely fantastic. So if you like our show art with me and Mario, you can thank Glenn by following him on Instagram at glenn_jay. Like Jeremy said, the Patreon, you should check it out if you like the two of us and the stuff that we talk to people about when it comes to video games. Find a tier that's right for you. It starts at $1, and then you get bonus content that comes out, like new stuff, $5 and up. So check that out as well. There's a link in the show notes. for Super NPC Radio. You can follow the show everywhere on social media. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, and TikTok as well. You can follow me at Connor_McCabe on Twitter and Instagram. At Blue Sky, on Blue Sky, I'm at Connor McCabe. And then also check me out at twitch.tv/consiscool69. I've been streaming my playthrough of Half-Life 2. I will not be done yet by the time this episode comes out. So if you want to catch me playing that game, give me a follow there and stop by a stream. Otherwise, I'm going to keep streaming other fun stuff. We'll see what's next. But that'll do it for the plugs. And thank you again so much for listening to the Call Me By Your Game podcast. This is episode 200. We'll see you on the next one.